Call the Willmar City Council work session for Monday, January 29th to order. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Nelson. Here. Christensen.
Here.
Schwanzes. Here. Alvarado.
Here.
Osmus. Here. Maskey.
Here.
Plowman. Fagerly.
Here.
8 ayes, or 8 present, 0 absent.
One absent.
Or 1 absent, I'm sorry.
Is there anybody here from the public that wishes to address the council this evening? Not yet, no. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to the agenda items. We have 2 items on our agenda tonight. We have the curling club proposal. Mr. Tom Amberg will be doing that. And then we have the Civic Center ice replacement. And Mr. Christensen, our Public Works Director, will be doing that. So, Mr. Amberg, if you would like to start. And we do have the materials that you did send to us, so we received those 2 weeks ago. And so we do have your handout, so we did have an opportunity to brief that. And then we did receive the financial information that you received last week on Friday as well. So if you want to reference any of those documents, you certainly can do that. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time and everybody being here to listen to our proposal. And I noticed that we got locked in, and I've got one more gentleman, Jim Bach from Marcus, that might be knocking on the door any time.
The back door should be open.
Okay, sounds good. Hello, my name is Tom Amberg, and I'm a curler. Wouldn't you like to be a curler too? I would like to thank all of you for being here and listening to our story about curling in the Willmar area and beyond. When I say beyond, I mean we have interests as far away as Montevideo in curling. We have a current member from Hutchinson that curls. Marshall has a crew that has been asking us for a couple years to start learning curling. Our market is getting larger as interest in the sport is growing. For those that may be skeptical of the sport and think it's only a fad, we only need to look at its beginnings around the year 1540. First documented time a challenge of throwing a stone 3 times to a point on the ice was recorded. The game was more refined when in 1838 the first curling club was formed. They are now celebrating 180 years of curling. Curling was first introduced to the Olympic Winter Games in 1924, only 4 years after hockey in 1920. In 1959, countries started competition outside of the Olympics in the form of the Scotch Cup, a representation of nation's best curlers. Curling truly is a sport with a long history. I'm hoping today we can demonstrate to you the reasons why curling is a sport needing different conditions than hockey or figure skating, which can share the same ice conditions. Curling needs softer, clean, level ice maintained in low humidity to be able to have the stone perform. Our current and here's a picture of a gentleman coming out of the hack to release the stone, and that is the rock in front of him. Our current situation in the blue line does not allow all these to be achieved. Don't get me wrong. Myself and our club members do appreciate the crew at the arena, but with the addition of locker rooms in the arena, we have lost control of our environment. Why is there a need for a standalone curling facility? One we have already discussed, and that is the ice conditions and the environment. It would also free up ice time for hockey and figure skating, allow them more practice. It would allow curling membership to expand as we are now full. Our leagues, we cannot get any more. It would allow more adaptive programs for handicap and for the youth. It would benefit the community with more events coming to town, more heads on beds, as we all know. It would also benefit the city with another avenue of rents during the summer months, possibly renting out for weddings or for graduations. I would like to read you a letter that was sent to the Curling Club a couple years ago when we first started our campaign. To whom it would may concern, in regard and support of the Willmar Curling Club, my name is Shannon Bolter, and for the past 2 years I've been able to participate in the adaptive curling that is being offered by members of the Willmar Curling Club, Willmar, Minnesota. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to participate in curling this winter season. When I first started, I was so excited to be a part of the adaptive curling group. I had never before even been on an ice surface. My staff would help me keep my balance and encourage me to participate. Because I'm so short, if anybody's ever met her, I need to use an adaptive stick to push the rock, and I was so excited about that that I was able to purchase my very own stick. A number of the members of the Willmar Curling Club volunteer their time every week to teach us, help us, encourage us to curl. I appreciate each of them, and they are like family, and they care so much for each one of us. The Willmar Curling Club asked our team if we would like to participate in the annual bonspiel this past spring. We are so excited to be in the opening ceremony and to participate and compete in the entire event. I look forward to being in curling and with the club members and thank each of them for their support and care. Just a brief note from my mom, Helene. Shannon looks forward to the opportunity all year to being involved with the curling club, from spending time with the members themselves and taking care of the ice to curl. She has made many new friends who will not miss an opportunity to be a member of the Willmar Curling Club. In appreciation, Shannon Bolter. We do get quite a few comments about needing more ice time, and that's kind of my opening statements. And from now, what I'll do is ask current members and people that are very active in our organization to come forward and just kind of give a short and little with what they represent. Randy is very active as an official, and he's traveled around to many different clubs, and I'd like to have him come forward. He also is in the Olympic Games, official for the curling there.
Welcome, Randy.
Thank you. I guess my presentation is probably a little bit more just talking about bullet points of what the benefit to the community would be to a certain degree. As Tom said, in terms of the activity of the club, because a lot of people may say there's a significant investment, for example, that the Curling Association is asking the city to be a part of, and will that continue to be a worthwhile investment as the years go on? And some of this, of course, is conjecture when we talk about what the future of the curling club would be, and my point of my presentation is trying to say how our club is perceived across the rest of the United States and the commitment of not only these people sitting behind me, but also the other members of the club that take part in it. You might be well aware that we hosted a mixed national event in 2013, and that was our first national that we hosted. And that was approximately, I believe it was 10 teams that were 4-player teams, and they were here for about a week's period of time. A smaller event based on the U.S. levels, but nonetheless, we had 40-plus people with their spouses and coaches here for a week. And, you know, if you calculate in 2 per hotel room and the time that they spent here and the meals that they had and everything, that was the first benefit that the city really saw from time in Willmar. And then a couple of years ago, we hosted the Junior Nationals, which was 20 teams and 4 players each. And if you calculate in, we figured about 1.5 parents that followed each player that was there. When we were all said and done, we knew we were somewhere in the 800 room nights total during the 8-day event. I just came from Duluth this last weekend, men's and women's seniors, 28 teams. Not all the parents, of course, there with the older adults, but again, just on a 5-day event, they calculated that they had about 350 to 400 room nights, and the benefits that those people traveling into Duluth, you know, from an economic standpoint. So those are some of the benefits that the city as a whole receives by making this investment, and we certainly feel confident that with the energy of the club and everything, certainly every other year we would be capable of hosting some type of a national event. There's always a demand for clubs to do this type of thing in lots of different levels of events. There's, besides this, there's mixed doubles, which is also a new Olympic sport this year, another sign of the growth of curling, and a number of others. So we have a lot of opportunities to host national events and bring people to Willmar. As far as the club's commitment, for example, when we talk about my opportunity to grow in the officiating world, between registered instructors and certified officials of our approximate 110 members, we have more than 20% of the club is certified in those opportunities, which is the highest number per ratio of club members of any club in the United States. And to have that carry on over the last couple of years, like just this year, we had 4 different members that worked at the mixed doubles Olympic trials, and we've had a number of other members work in Eau Claire and a couple of other communities as well that I'm aware of. So our influence spreads out across a number of other communities involved with curling, and because of that, we get recognition as a city when USA Curling takes a look at awarding national events. In addition to curling being interesting in the Olympics, it is over the last 2 Olympics, for example, as a worldwide sport, the largest watched sport in web streaming. We don't always have control over what NBC decides to air because obviously hockey would be the most interesting and figure skating and things like that. But if you talk about the niche underground group of people that are searching for the other sports, of which almost all of them can be seen on a web stream, curling dominates that over the last 2 Olympics, and we're expecting that again. So just to hit on those few high points, this is the reason why we feel that curling will continue to sustain itself in the area. And as Tom said, the one thing that has limited our growth over the years is the fact that we just have 2 draws on Wednesday night and then 1 draw on Thursday at this point, and everybody quickly cleans up afterwards, and that 5 o'clock draw, usually by 7:15, the figure skaters are on the ice. But because of that, our growth has been right around 100 to 110 members every year. So just to kind of close on the benefits of that growth, and some of you have probably heard these presentations from us already. I was just telling Ron beforehand that in a converted grocery store in Lakeville, the former Burnsville Club, just in 1 year, went from approximately 100 to 110 members, and they have 240 members now in 1 year. There's a new facility in Blaine with 6 sheets, and they now run year-round ice and leagues year-round. And overall, obviously some players move from one league to the next overall, but they have over 1,100 so-called members across all leagues. But possibly, yes?
Would you just clarify, is this being broadcast?
It's being recorded, and then it'll be streamed after that.
Okay.
So it's not live, no.
Okay, I was just going to ask you to clarify sheets,
Okay.
so that if somebody hears that, they're not thinking we're putting down.
That many buildings or whatever.
Right, yeah.
So this example, this picture is a good example here. And Kevin, you're going to have to correct me, but we used at the mixed nationals, we used 4 sheets, correct? Yes, so we were in the blue line. This is a shot in the blue line here. And what they did is you can see these walkways on each side of 2 sheets of curling ice there. So in one building in the blue line, we had 4 sheets of curling. And there's walkways laid down with foam and foam pads so that coaches and what have you can move up and down the sidelines without dragging dirt on the ice. So, and if you watch the Olympics and you get a top-down view of it when it comes on television, you'll be able to see how that layout is very similar in that particular situation. So, and of course, then I'm just going to jump back to finish out my statement about the growth of curling in Minnesota. The city of Chaska put in a new arena. They have 10 curling sheets under one roof, and it was their goal to get 250 new members to participate in the club in the first year, and first-year signups were 910 people. Now, obviously, Chaska a little bit bigger town than Willmar, but you can just see that those curlers weren't curling elsewhere because there was no curling ice at that time. And the interest, again, this year, I've just talked to Steve Isaacson, who's running the facility over there, and I think they're like at 1,100 here in the second year. So their growth continues to grow at a fairly rapid pace. So certainly a reason why we feel that a facility all under one roof is going to continue to be viable for certainly into the future, and our ability to bring dollars in, or what the benefit is, to the city of Willmar. So that being said, I mean, I can have other. Kevin certainly can talk a little bit about history. He also will talk about all of the events he's been working at, and putting in ice for and what he sees in other communities as well. So, any questions?
Randy, thank you and Susie for both your involvement at a national level. And I know you guys recently received your certificate to go back to the Olympics.
That's correct, yeah. Actually, our first
Congratulations.
Olympic visit. We've worked worldwide for 3 different times, and we'll be taking off on February 3rd. For those of you that might be watching on television, the mixed doubles will start on the 6th, about 3 days before the opening ceremonies, and continue all the way through to the 4-player games, and then we will be coming back home on the 28th. So we're honored and humbled and excited. We are the only 2 U.S. officials to be selected. So.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep.
Quite an honor. So coming
you.
right here from Willmar, Minnesota. So,
Yep.
Thank you. Tom?
Just to reiterate some things then that Randy had talked about, this is our curling magazine that we get from the National Curling Magazine or National Curlers Association. And just so you know, if we get dedicated ice, we'll be able to have some more bonspiels, which is our tournaments. Bonspiels are open to everybody to come throughout, whoever wants to drive or fly in and see us. But we are only mentioned in here one time this last year. With a little bit more ice time, we'd be able to get more bonspiels and be able to get more competition with people coming into town. Now, just so you know, we're mentioned in here with New York, Denver, Colorado. We're in here with a whole bunch of places. Coyotes, Arizona, which is Tempe, Arizona. At Philadelphia, PA. So our name is mentioned with the big dogs, but we're only in here once. We'd like to be in here many, many more times if we can get some more ice time. With that said, I'm going to have Don Nelson come up. Don is our president of the association, and he'll talk about membership.
Welcome, Don.
Thank you. I'm on the membership committee besides being president of the club. And as mentioned before, we have 20 teams on Wednesday and 10 on Thursday, which means we cannot take any more teams because we're full. We don't have the ice time. And we've actually turned away members that want to join, but we don't have any ice time for them. We've also been doing, schools have been coming in and want to do Learn to Curl. We have Montevideo coming in this year with approximately 90 kids. We have Litchfield coming over this Friday. And basically, we try to do everything on a Thursday because the ice is set up. Otherwise, we have to come in, reset the ice, and so they can curl. We've turned down various groups from the area that want to come in, and whether it's an organization or a business, they want to come in as a function for their business or organization to curl. And we've turned quite a few down there because they want to come in on a weekday or a weeknight, and we just don't have any time available for them. So it's we just lack of ice time. We can't bring in a lot of groups anymore. We do have groups coming in on Saturday. They reserve some time saying we need instructors and stuff. So, but right now we're just kind of at a standstill because we don't have ice time. So that's just basically it for the membership.
Thank you. Just a second.
Yep.
Councilmember Nelson, you wanted to ask Don a question?
Just a clarification, does everyone who curls have to be a member?
No, you can be a sub, and you just pay a fee, nightly fee to sub.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you're on a team, yes, you have to pay a membership, and we pay membership dues to the USGA curling too. We pay dues to them for every member. That's out of the money we get. So yes,
But
you have to be a member to curl in the league.
The schools and the adaptive and the community ed and rec classes you do?
No.
You don't do membership?
No.
Memberships. Okay, thank you.
Tom?
I was just going to say, when we do have Saturday night ice, anybody can come out, like the adaptive on Thursday.
Correct. Saturday nights, when we do have some ice
Tom?
time, it's $3. Oh, Saturday nights, when we do have some ice time, it is $3. Anybody can come out and curl. You do not have to be a member. I was out there 2-3 weeks ago, and there was a family with 2 younger kids that were just trying it out just to see what it's like for the very first time. So it's good to see a little bit of participation there. Something that Don didn't mention is curling is a sport for all. So we have younger, 2 of them, and I can't even tell you the ages, that are currently participating in Detroit, Michigan as the, what is it, Randy? Junior Nationals, and 2 of them from Willmar, Minnesota are there competing, and they're high schoolers. The other thing, the other end of the spectrum is we do have, I hate using this word, older, but we do have some retired people that are curlers also. So when we talk about the adaptive curling, when we talk about the youth curling and all these coming in, we do have a lot of members that do take the time, come in, help to teach to curl, help take care of that. That's no expense to City of Willmar. It's really no expense to us. The only thing, again, is just the ice time. Next person, I'm going to have Kevin Mattson to come up and talk about the ice current conditions at the Blue Line. Come on, Kevin. And with what is going on there, and then why keeping humidity is good in the building and things like that.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. I didn't know I was going to speak, but here I am. And so here we go. And I'm going to talk about ice conditions in curling. Well, we do arena curling. And, of course, we do not have a dedicated facility. The difference between arena curling and dedicated is like night and day. Because in a dedicated facility, you have a completely controlled environment, a completely controlled, leveled ice sheet to play on. So it's 2 different things. The fact that we're able to succeed as an arena curling club here in Willmar at the Civic Center is because we have such a fantastic membership that goes out and finds the information and the knowledge to create the best conditions that we can possibly have, but they still will never match a dedicated facility as far as level of competitive curling. And that's what we're kind of chasing right now. All of us have been curling, quite a few of us have been curling for 10 years plus. And well, if you're a golfer and you've been golfing for 10 years and you never get better, I don't know if you'd keep on golfing. But when you're curling, you get better at it, you start to go out and do other tournaments and bonspiels, and when you have to come back to the arena setting, it's like kind of like golfing at the at a very nice country club, and then you have to go back to probably a sand course or something like that. Just trying to give you some ideas and some comparisons as to what we're facing. We don't have a good control of the environment, and it's not the fault at all of the facility. Both the Blue Line Arena and the Civic Center Arena, they are set up for skating. They are not set up for competitive curling. So it's not a blame game here that that the city can't offer us something. It just can't be done because the environment does not allow for it. Do you have any questions about, yeah, Julie?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a couple. First, as far as, you don't need a Zamboni,
No.
so we don't have any issue of the Zamboni going between buildings. Just want to clarify that. But I was hearing that the ice, as far as the ice plant, that you don't need as cold of ice or temperatures as an ice skating rink. Could you explain that?
Well, the size of a curling, the curling field of play, if you had 4 sheets, is probably, I'm going to say 40% smaller than a hockey rink, okay? So the size of it itself, it doesn't need as many tons of refrigeration to accomplish the job. So the compressors are smaller. And, okay, in a hockey skating situation where you're running a resurfacer like a Zamboni on the hour, and you're applying like 150 gallons of hot water to the surface, it takes a big plant, a big refrigeration plant, in order to continually freeze that water. In a curling setting, you don't do that. The ice is there, and the ice is a little warmer, so it doesn't take quite as much energy to freeze it, but there's no a big load of heat that's applied to the ice sheet in curling. It's very much easier to maintain with the tonnage of refrigeration you need. So if you've got 80 tons of refrigeration in the Blue Line Center right now, a 4-sheet curling club would only require about 40, just like half, okay? And it wouldn't run as much as the 80-ton unit, just to give you some information on that.
So ideally, would you be looking at a 4-sheet? Or a,
4 sheets is something that you can do just about every national event in a 4-sheet facility. So it works for hosting national events. It works for having enough of a membership number to pay the bills. And it's like, it's the most affordable, you might say, facility to build in terms of supplying the needs for all of the members. Yes.
and just, this is kind of more for maybe people listening. But I look at the facility now, and let's say that was just designated for curlers. You guys have put a lot of work into that as far as the, you know, the viewing area and the ramps. Why would you want a totally separate facility?
Well, if you were to use the arena as it is for a curling facility, it could be done, but there would be quite a bit of retrofitting to make it work for us. And, you know, you'd want to completely redo the ice floor, because there would be no sense in refrigerating that entire mass of floor there. You'd put in a floor that fits the size of the curling sheets that you have. The other thing is the space, the actual cubic air space that we have to deal with as far as an environment would be much larger than a 4-sheet club, so it would cost more, like to heat it and all of that. So it could certainly work, but it would be a kind of a different formula. You have to figure out how you would like pay the bills. You understand, because it's just a bigger facility. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much,
Yep.
Kevin. And thank you also, because you also prepare ice on a national basis.
I do, and along with Randy, a lot of times I meet Randy at a lot of cities all over the country. He's officiating and I'm making the ice. We have a good time. Just to throw something out there, because I know Tom had mentioned something about Marshall. I was in Marshall, Minnesota last night at their new Red Baron Arena, which is just fantastic, beautiful arena complex. And they set up 1 sheet of curling ice, and I was to go there and do a little learn to curl for the community. So I figured, oh, we'll get 8 to 10 people to show up, because they only painted in 1 sheet and had 1 set of stones, and 125 people showed up. So I had to teach 125 people with 1 set of stones, but we had a ball. We figured it all out. But that is just, that is happening all over the United States, everywhere I go. And I basically teach arena folks how to make the ice, but when I'm there, the learn to curl people come in right behind me, and it's a popular thing. So, thanks.
Thanks for your service to our community.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Schwantes?
Yeah,
Kevin, hold
I
on.
apologize. I was just a little slow on the draw, but thank you all for your presentation so far. This has all been really very good.
Okay.
A question for you. I understand that you don't need as much capacity as our ice plant provides, but if it was reasonable and to the city's advantage, really, while we're doing it, building the new ice plant and things, if the proximity was close and such, would you be able to use the ice plant that we are looking at in the second half of this meeting?
Well, it depends on where you locate our new facility. I mean, you can't pump glycol a mile, you know.
Right.
So it'd have to be close. And I don't know if we've looked at that real closely yet, but yeah. But it could be done, but you have to locate the building. And you got a fellow right here that could tell you more about it. Right, Scott? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
All right, to Julie's question about ice and the cost of doing and the density, the gentleman that is looking at putting in for the curling club from St. Cloud Refrigeration, and he and I had a conversation about the pros and cons of a chilling plant for 3 sheets and a chilling plant for each individual. One of the comments he had made is if the chilling plant is to be paid for individually, to keep in mind that for the curling ice, if we were to take 100 sticks, he said put 20 sticks in for the curling club and 40 for each of the other 2 sheets of ice that are used for hockey, because the curling ice would take about 50% of the energy that each one of those sheets would take individually. So the breakdown would be 20, 40, 40. Make sense? Okay. All right. To tell you the truth, I had Jim Bach from Marcus coming, and I don't see Jim here. I know that they had a really busy schedule. And when you went through and you got your proposal that we had sent out and put together for you, Jim is the one that came through and did the numbers for us. And I just want to point out a couple things, if you guys have that with you.
It's page 14 of our electronic document.
First of all, this is all stemming from a meeting that we had December 11th, and by the end of December, we were supposed to be doing a presentation to you. So these numbers were all put together within about a week or 2 weeks' time. So just to really quick go through it, at that time, we did not have a site location out at the Civic Center. So site development, is it page 14 that it was on?
Well, I went to the
project
Marcus
estimate?
proposal. You wanted to go through the budget?
Yeah, just
The
the
budget is
budget
page
real
9.
quick. Okay.
No, that's not right either. Somebody help me.
I was trying to find it.
You talking about this?
No, that's the operating budget.
It's 2 pages after the Marcus one.
I'm just going by my book. How you got
Okay, so
them in
it'd be
the
page
email.
15 and 16 in our document. Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you go through the project estimate and we start at the top, there's really not much for numbers that we could have put in for the parking lot, site prep, and so forth, because the first couple sites that we were looking at, that was already there if we do put them in the first couple sites we looked at. Site development, Marcus Construction and myself had decided to put in $150,000 because we did not know what the cost of running city sewer and water or doing any of the dirt work without a perk test being done. So we threw in $150,000 to hopefully cover all of our expenses. The building estimate, Jim again had discussed that there was not enough time to put out for multiple bids on everything, such as concrete, such as plumbing, such as electrical. So he has only one bid, and again, there's no competitive bids. And the reason why I tell you this is because we're hoping that it's going to come in a lot less than this. I am giving you the devil's advocate when I give you $2,242,000. That is the top that we're hoping for everything to go through. So we're hoping that bid's going to be less. And the site development, if we decide to go to the original spot, or if that's the space that the city allows us to build, from what we saw from the dirt work and the estimates, I think that came in at $25,000. So if you look at the bottom line, we're already knocking off $125,000. You see where I'm going with this? Again, we've got it all kind of high. The ice plant and the floor, $361,000. We have in there the cost to put in the chill plant, everything to run underneath the floor. We also have in there another $30,000 for the humidity, to control the humidity in there. Now, we have options of $5,000, $15,000, $20,000 for humidity. It just depends upon what Kevin feels comfortable with putting in and what things are the future. So hopefully we can save a couple $1,000s there. Obviously, with the project expenses, we have capital campaign and capital interest. This all goes down to if we have to go out door knocking, if we have to bond the full 40% that is proposed, if we have to carry that for 5 years, that's the expense. If somebody decides to write us a big check, like in Brainerd had somebody come forward and pledged $1 million, which covered their expenses that they had left to pay. If we don't have that capital campaign expenses or interest, $95,000 saved. So there's lots of things that we have built into this, and the goal, my personal goal, not the, I haven't talked to this with the membership or anything, is we'd like to be around that 1.7, 1.8 by the time everything's all said and done. So again, I don't want you to think that this is a number that is locked in at all. The other thing that Jim and I had done was I went out and visited a couple curling facilities, and I got a lot of don't do this, but do this. And one of the things we built in there was two curling facilities I had talked to did not plan for a kitchen, but now they're putting in kitchens and realizing that it's over $50,000 so far and growing. So with this budget, what we're proposing is putting in the hoods, putting in the water lines, putting in the sinks. As time goes on, or as funds come in, we'll be buying the appliances, stoves, whatever miscellaneous items, stainless steel tables. The other thing that two of the clubs had mentioned to me that they screwed up on was they didn't put any lockers in the locker rooms. They built them, but they didn't put them in, and they lost revenues on not having those lockers there. So any questions on the proposal?
Just a question on dehumidification versus air conditioning.
Good point. Okay. That's one thing I had forgotten to mention in this project proposal is in the lobby, in the viewing area, in the locker rooms, restaurant part of it, I have in this bid central air included. So the city had asked that on December 11th, that when we get the bid to have the air conditioning in there. Obviously, we're using it during the winter months. We don't need air conditioning. But we did have the bid in there for the air conditioning just to make sure it's covered for the city so that when they rent it out, they can do it. Now, to get to your question, Audrey, the dehumidification system, think of it as a dehumidifier in the basement of your house. It's taking the moisture out of the air. If you were to look at frost outside on your car in the morning and you saw that there was frost buildup on the windshield, that's because of the air cooling down and drawing the moisture out of the air. That creates, if you were to look at the picture, so when you're throwing that stone, the stone is laying flat on the ice. And if you have a high humidity inside the building, it's going to create a little frost over the top of that ice. And that stone's not going to travel the way it's supposed to. Just an example, about 3 weeks ago, outside had gotten to be about 35, 36 air temp when we were curling. The first two people on both teams, the curl, didn't even make it to what we call the house, which is where the paint and all that stuff is. The stones stuck to the ice and they didn't travel as far as they're supposed to. That's humidity. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. And again, there's multiple ways to do that. currently, and Kevin can maybe help me with this, but originally in the Blue Line Club, it was set up to where the heaters circulated the air going around and it helped take the humidity out of the air. Well, in the last 2-3 years, couple years, those heaters quit working and the air doesn't circulate the way it's supposed to. So they put up a different dehumidification system on the side of the building where the ice is. So basically what you're doing is you're pulling all the humidity from this side of the building to this side of the building. So the ice that is right underneath that dehumidification system is attracting a little bit of the moisture. And again, it's nobody's fault. It's not the crew at the arena. It is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. And that only happens when it gets to be warm outside. Okay? Any other questions on the project? Yep.
Okay. Last year, Fernando and Kathy and I did have the opportunity, when we were up in Brainerd, to look at their facility. And so we, got firsthand, we really talked about, their cooling system and their space. And I believe they were probably one of the ones that didn't put the kitchen in. And now they're in the process of doing that, and that's important to have there. But just to get down to the nitty-gritty of the A, B, C, and D of locations that we had, we saw as proposals, what does the curling club want? Which site is your preference?
Well, I can only speak for myself. This just came out, and I sent it out to the board members, but the board has not met since. Okay, so I'm only speaking for myself, and I've talked to a couple people on the city council, and I've talked to a couple of our board members, and I've also talked to the mayor about this too. And A was the original, twisted a little bit, site, which is a good site. The only thing is you're getting close to the door where hockey players go in. So what I'm saying is how congested is it going to be during other events going on? B was kind of like my dream. B is off to the side. You're going to be able to utilize all of the parking because now you have a different entrance to a different building, so it's off and out of the way, and you're going to utilize all of the parking space. And then we'd have, there was,
We're trying to get the slide up.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, because that's exactly what I was thinking of when I was looking at those locations, thinking, well, I'm guessing they would like B or C or D
D,
because
yep.
of the locations to the parking lot and be able to use that part for people to enter.
Correct. We would like to utilize what the city already has in place. If you go out there during any event, especially on Wednesday when hockey's there and curling's there, the whole west side is full, and then when you get on the middle of the divide there and you get on the other side, you're going to see maybe 15, 20 cars over there, and the farther east you go, it's empty. There's nothing being utilized. And I've been talking with Aaron with Warhawks, and he called me the other day on Friday, and we had a nice conversation. They're very much in support of with what we're looking at doing. And he had also made the same comment because I think it's Friday, the March 9th, he's already talking about his last game of the season. We got a bond spill going on. And he goes, Tom, how many people do you think you're having come into town? And I said, I think the number was we had 30-some teams last year when we did this bond spill. So they're going to have their last game going on. We're going to have our bond spill going on. That's a full parking lot. So, and it's not just the Warhawks. I think with the Cardinals and the programs that they got going on, we've butted heads a couple times on the same night. But it's nothing major now. But if we're going to do this, I want to do it right. So Plan B was kind of my dream, and we have not had a perk test there. We haven't had anything else done there. And according to the Curly's numbers that we were just given here the other day, that's the most expensive spot. Yep. There's always a downfall, isn't there? But that's the most expensive spot. And then we get into C. C is behind the building. We lose some of the attractiveness of being up front. It is with signage and everything. You can find it, I'm sure, and it's visible by the bypass, and I think that we could be noticed there. The only thing is I'm concerned about how you're going to do parking, drainage. With the cost of having to be in the location, are we going to have to come up with some, are we going to have a holding pond in back? Also, if there's no tarred or covered parking lot for your use during the summer, is it going to be wet? Is it going to be muddy? Is it people going to want to utilize it? So the cost of just additional parking and drainage back there, DNR, I have nothing to do with them and how they do their trail or what you guys got agreed to with the DNR, but obviously there the trail would have to be moved. But that would be closest to, from what I understand, where the proposed chilling plant is. And out of all fairness, that would be the cheapest to run the chilling plant if it was to go to 3 sheets. Again, talking to Mike from St. Cloud Refrigeration, his biggest concern is how far, even with the 2 existing buildings there, how far and how many pumps have to go to maintain that ice. Because the longer that you run those lines, the more it's going to cost you to keep it chilled, 1, and 2, just the electric. So out of all fairness, C would be better if there was a 3 plant chill, and it would be the closest. Now to D. D came around as being farther away from the door, utilizing kind of the same concept as B, being able to utilize more of the parking lot. And then D is put in within the realm of the city sewer and water. So again, it would be cheaper to hook it up there and farther away from the main doors that they are now. So D is good. Again, I can't speak for the curling board. We haven't had time to meet on this, so I don't know. Yeah, that's the current sewer lines.
Tom, Jim just walked in if you wanted to call on him.
Oh, I do want to call on Jim.
And
Does that answer your question?
Well, yep, and one more as he's coming up.
Okay.
Now, initially, what I had heard was that you guys were looking at raising $1 million before you could go ahead. Did these numbers then surprise you when these came in? Had the
Yes.
cost estimates gone up?
Yes, estimates have gone up. And again, I built in everything.
Right.
We have the locker rooms ready to go, which that's something I can talk about when we get into the budget. I got the locker rooms ready to go. I got the kitchens with the hoods, the main stuff that we need, that's all ready to go. So I can't explain too much more other than Jim can kind of go through some of that. And part of the things that we had talked about with the current bid that we can knock off a couple thousands of dollars more, and Jim can probably get this a little bit closer, is currently the proposals for the Willmar Curling Club. If we were to run through the city somehow or run through another organization, if we can knock off sales tax, we might save another $50,000 there. It's the city's land. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can knock off. I don't sound it bad, but we can get it lower. Jim?
Hold on just a second, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you can clarify, but maybe city staff can. C, is that city land all the way? I didn't think we had that much land behind the Civic Center.
My understanding is that the drawings were just dropped in just to give a general location, was my understanding. Is that right, Mr. Christensen?
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, that's exactly right. Those are general ideas. Obviously, when the facility plan is adjusted, when the facility plan is actually gets underway, we'll have a lot better idea of exactly where those potential locations are. I can look here real quick and see exactly where that property line is, but somewhere in that vicinity is exactly right, changes from city to school ownership.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Jim? just so you know, he does have, if you want to go to the first one that's on there.
Hi, everyone. Jim Bach, Marcus Construction.
Hello?
Glad to see you.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
We've had a riveting conversation thus far.
Super.
Yes.
Great. Just a little background. Marcus Construction started working with the curling club actually several years ago, just kicking around various ideas, various locations for a facility. And so we have a little background on what they're trying to accomplish. And we've used some of that background in putting together what you're seeing for this facility. Really is a pre-engineered steel structure, meeting the specifications for, by their mechanical people for the ice mechanicals, as well as some of the things that the curling club has expressed interest in terms of the observation club, the kitchen, video, and really a general seating area. So that's what we put together for them, using a lot of their ideas and a lot of our historical construction costs and processes to put together the estimate that Tom has presented to you. So I'm here to answer what questions I can. Again, this is not an architectural rendering. This is not something that's gone out to bid. Okay, that would be part of our process. Once we got to that point, there are certain engineering requirements for us to present to the building inspectors, and we'll certainly do all of those things. And then we will put this out for bid and make it a competitive bid process in hopes that we can get some basically get some dollars out of this thing.
You would be presenting a document that would have an engineer's signature on it, correct?
Yes, we would. Yes, absolutely. All structural engineering, all mechanical engineering, whatever is required. Yeah, and all code review. We do all in-house. We have architectural capability in-house, and so all of our code reviews are done at that point. So hopefully they're in line by the time they get to the city, that stuff has been taken care of.
Sure.
I know over the years, there's been conversations about the footings at the Blue Line Arena, and in the conversations
Yes.
with the curlers, we've talked about footings.
Yes.
So would you just address the structure of the building as it?
Well, first and foremost, the structure is just how you see it. When it comes to the engineering piece of it, when you start talking about footings and foundations in a building, we would anticipate that soil borings would need to be done once a location is found for this facility. Those soil borings would give us the information necessary to get into the hands of the excavation contractors, and then those reports done by civil engineers would tell us then the size of the footings, the size of the foundations that would support the loads of the building on that particular piece of property. Does that make sense?
I just wanted to clarify, because I know there was concerns that we don't have the same issues that we do with the Blue Line Arena, so you answered that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Audrey, I cannot address that. I'm not sure what testing was done prior to the building of that facility. We were not involved in that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If you stick around in case any other questions come up. So, perfect. Tom?
Trying to hit you before 7:30, I'm sure. So if we get back to off the project and go back to our budget, and are we able to support a facility like this, and can we maintain it after it's been built? I don't know what page you guys?
Page 9 for us.
Page 9 for you? And as you know, some of these numbers are going to be obscure because they're only projections, and Some of this is projections, and some of it is talking to other curling clubs to see with what they have done. And if you look at season 1, we're not jumping up and down at paying members at 160. We're proposing maybe more than that, but again, we're trying to keep everything as realistic as possible. Hogline Saloon, we got $13,684. We are looking at doing a mini restaurant and saloon to support for our bonspiels. Curling is a very sociable event. So when you're watching or participating, a beverage of some sort is in hand. Sponsors advertising right now, that's at $5,000. We're looking at if we're allowed by the city to do advertising, hang up banners, do so forth. Again, this is going to be your building, and we would need to have in either the lease or an agreement with what we could do for advertising so we can get additional dollars. Bonspiels, currently, we put in, we don't know what bonspiels are going to be. We obviously are running bonspiels now, and we know that there's going to be an income coming off there. So what we did was we put in fundraisings and promotions, $21,000. Part of that is bonspiels and tournaments. We also have the Harley motorcycle raffle that we draw from, and we also have a couple other events throughout the year that we got a little bit of money coming in. Currently, we have newer equipment. We do not need to replace or get sponsorship or pay for any new equipment, so we're good there. And then, like I think Randy had mentioned, or Don, that we do have to pay out some dues per member, and that is broken down there. And then insurance on the building would be your insurance. We would have to reimburse you for what part of the time that we are at the building. I did not get an estimate from city or anybody. Again, I've just asked some other curling clubs, and we're close. That's just more or less a speculation to with what they were paying. Utilities, I asked Brainerd. We are looking at using the same size facility as what Brainerd is using, and they said that their maximum that they had used at one point was $2,400 for the month. So over 7 months of usage, if we put in 2,400, 21,000 is going to be a little bit above that. So again, if there's any problems or if anything comes up, 21,000 should cover all of our expenses. Administrative, we threw in that if somebody has to do some books, covering to send in our memberships, do miscellaneous stuff. Again, our membership is very, very active. Before I go much further, I'd like to thank John Melander personally. He's the one that put this book together for you. He's done a lot of research for us. And he is our administrator right now. He's very informative. Taxes, we would have to pay sales tax on beverages and food that we sell out there. And currently we have in their payroll, as in we're a nonprofit, and a lot of our members would hopefully work for free, we hope. But when you get to season 6, you're going to see that we did put in payroll. We do want to get somebody that's going to be out there and taking care of things for us. And through the next seasons, we're hoping to get up in there. And then breaking down the expenses, the only thing I really want to break out and show it to you is ice facility and equipment. We did put in the first couple years or first seasons, $3,200. We're expecting that if we do get our own facility, standalone facility, and our own chilling plant, that St. Cloud Refrigeration would have to come out and start us up, maintain us, and shut us down. According to Kevin's numbers from conversations with them, they're looking at roughly about $3,000 to do that every year for us. So that'll take care of any of the expenses that we have with the chilling plant. And then the numbers through the years just get, 200, 250 members, and then accordingly, everything else rises with that as far as income goes. Any questions?
I have several questions for you. Thank you, Tom. First of all, on your dues-paying members, we have 160, and right now you're about 106. I originally thought maybe there was a typo, but hearing the prior conversation.
We are at 106.
So your goal is that you would have 160 members when you kick off?
Yes, currently we have the numbers could be different because you know how the grapevine goes, but I was told that we had 4 teams that got turned away this last year that wanted to curl. So 4 times 4 is 16 more, and that's just people that we hadn't gone out and asked to do. So
Okay, perfect. Then, can you tell me for the bonding, what period of time you're looking at? I think I heard 5 years, but if there is any thought in regard to the repayment of that financing and where that would show up on this?
it doesn't show up on any part of this because the agreement that we have with the city is it has to be 100% proven that we can pay it back. And 100% means that the agreement that gentleman's handshake that we had December 11th was 60% funds in an account to get it started with a 40% commitment. So in other words, the commitment would be coming from example. We have, when we were figuring out how we're going to pay this back, if we were to look at just our members, just the current members, if we were to look at 106 members, and if we got a 3-year commitment out of them at $1,000 apiece on average, I'm not saying everybody's going to commit, but on an average, that's $300 and some thousand. So I've already talked to a couple banks that, no guarantees because we don't have any numbers or anything, that would be willing to commit also for 3-4 years. And this would be kind of the same setup as in, did you commit to the Barn Theater, how they did that, or the YMCA, where they went out and they got commitments through the years and then everybody just paid when they got the bill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that. And I know that you've got your interest put into the cost of the project.
Correct.
The cost of it, but, okay.
Same philosophy that we're going off of. We've got a gentleman by the name of Roby Wayne that has been helping us out, and he's been making some suggestions. But until we get squared away, I told him to go on vacation and talk to me when he comes back.
Do you have an estimate how long it will take you to raise the funds as far as a commitment for them and then collected funds? Has he given you any estimates for that?
He's a very optimistic guy. And he's looking at 12 months to 18 months when I talk to him on the phone. It's hard to say. Again, if you look at Brainerd just had somebody that gave him $1 million. If you look at Fargo-Moorhead got a sponsor and they gave him $3 million. Could something like that happen here? Don't know.
Thank you.
Mr. Okens, did you run any numbers on bonding expenses at all? Our finance director.
Mr. Mayor, members of the councils, we have had some preliminary numbers run and had conversations with Springsteads, not on these new numbers that have been presented here, but on previous numbers that we had.
Right. So we have run those numbers, we just don't have the updated numbers.
Right. We've had preliminary conversations and conversations with Springstead and run some amortization schedules.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Christensen. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Tom, for being here. I just want to understand, you're looking for a standalone building
Correct.
with its own ice-making equipment,
That was the original proposal, yes.
and that's in here,
Yes.
okay? And would you be using the Zamboni
No.
from, do you use the Zamboni at all, or how?
No.
So you lay the ice down?
This is probably a better question for Kevin, but what we do is we go in and we do what we call a flood, where they take and they flood out all of the surface that's to be frozen, and then it gets leveled. And then from there,
That's okay, I mean, you don't have
Yeah.
to get technical about
yep,
it.
but the
I just wanna understand.
Zamboni would not be used.
Okay, then, how about the ceiling height in there? Does it have to be 12 feet, 15? I mean, not as high as the Blue Line or the Civic Center,
Correct.
because nothing's going up in the air.
Correct. And to tell you the truth, that's a very, very good question, because if you go back to the other pictures, and I don't think we even got to that picture, but there is an example of how the viewing area is laid out. There should be 2 or 3 other ones on there. It's one from Marcus. Nope, there should be another one. Oh, okay, I guess it's not there. Our viewing area is raised, but it's not raised as high as what the Blue Line Club is. So our ceiling, we don't need that second story. We're going to be lowered. And to view each end where you can see what we call the house, where those circles are, the colored circles, what the modern curling clubs do and with what we're proposing to do is we have TV monitors that we're going to have TV monitors in the viewing area, and we're going to have cameras over the top. So we're going to be able to see the stones come in on each end and watch that way. So as far as the question that you have, do we need to have the elevation or the ceiling height? No, we don't need that viewing area from up high.
Okay, and your utilities, you measured that at 7 months, correct?
Correct.
So then the other 5 months, the city would have to be picking up the utilities, whatever they
Correct.
are. How about maintenance of the building, the general maintenance, inside, outside? Is that going to be up to the city too, or while you're using it, you're going to maintain it?
While we're using it, we're going to maintain it. One of the things that we had discussed several times is what kind of lease and how's the lease going to be set up. Couple things, obviously, if the city's renting it out and somebody drives a car through the wall, we would expect the city to cover that. As far as the maintenance of the chilling plant, we're the only ones using the chilling plant. That would be all of our expense. As far as the kitchen and the bar area, when Marcus went through and did their bid, you can secure and get that from the rest of the building, just like in schools they have it. So the door, your serving door, you can close it up. So we set it up so that the city can either rent it out and charge somebody extra for insurance when they're using it. But once we hand over the keys, we would like to say that if you rent it out to somebody that busts the equipment in there, that would either be cities or whoever's renting it. Now, 2 is, the other reason why we would like to put it on the parking lot and in the 2 locations that are up front is you're already doing snow removal. You're already mowing lawn. It's not really going to take too much more to do anything as far as exterior maintenance goes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would like B also because of the parking, and that isn't used as much during hockey season. The liability insurance that you're talking about paying for would only cover 7 months. So then the city would pick up the other.
Again, we don't know how much liability insurance is, and everything's negotiable, Ron. We haven't sat down, discussed too much on the lease, other than we know that it has to be in place. We haven't discussed some of the maintenance thing, other than the chilling plant would be our responsibility. It's what we need to do with what we're going to do. The other thing is that I've got on our team, John Saunders, who's done many of these leases for multiple cities and other areas, and he's the one that's going to be representing or helping us with the lease. We also have a gentleman that is a curler that is willing to help out with leases. I've been doing leases for 24 years. I know everything can be hammered out. It's just a matter of you tell me what you want and me telling you what I want, and then we'll come to hopefully a happy middle. As far as liability insurance, I can't speak for the board. I can't speak for anybody else, but it could be that the city pays for the whole thing or we pay for the whole thing, but it just how it works out.
Mm-hmm. Well, it has to be part of somebody's budget.
Correct. And again, we didn't get any numbers. We don't know what the city pays. It's just that you pay less than what I would.
Okay. Do you know of, are there many other venues, curling venues being built presently in Minnesota or the upper Midwest that you're aware of? I mean, are we the only ones looking at this time, or is there quite a few others?
Alexandria is putting in a chilling plant, but they're not doing anything as far as building as of yet. To tell you the truth, I met with 2 of the members from Alexandria, and they're waiting to see with what we do. The chilling plant is going in.
Okay. Well, we just had an article put in our mailboxes about Alexandria, because they have a private venture that's putting up a sheet of ice, and then the city's waiting to see how that, what happens with that sheet.
70,000 square feet. It's quite a building.
That's good size.
70,000 square.
That's almost the same square footage as what your Blue Line and your Civic Center is combined. Back to your question. I did talk to St. Cloud Refrigeration. They're in the process of right now building the facility. He didn't say that the proposal of having a third sheet with curling put in is there, but currently they're building a two-sheeter, and that's for hockey, and it's both going to be in the same building, so the chill plant is hooked up to one building. And his comment was to get a chill plant, 3 or 4, to work well, the building should be together instead of like a finger where you've got them around like a campus.
Mm-hmm.
So
you said you're planning for a kitchen, and maybe Marcus has made you aware of the expense. I mean, you're prepping for one for the future, but they can be very expensive. And you probably need somebody to be licensed in the kitchen, and it's got to be inspected. I'm sure you're aware of that.
I own a building with 2 restaurants in them that I maintain.
Yeah.
I know how the expenses go.
Now, speaking of standalone building, is there any in Willmar? Any empty buildings that would accommodate this? Would even come close?
We've had many conversations about that, and you could go out to Industrial Park and there's a building sitting empty out there, and it's quite large. How do you maintain a building that you don't need that space? That's one. 2 is location. Industrial Park, personally, I don't have a problem with Industrial Park. It's real simple to get to now with the new road and everything else that's out there. But the building's oversized. We don't need that 40,000 extra square feet or whatever it is, 35,000 extra square feet. Looked at the mall, the space that the mall had provided. I walked through it with the mall management, and I'd love to be in the mall personally. But there's no room for kitchen. There's no room for, their proposal was to have a bar that somebody else would run, which I think would be an awesome deal. But there's no room for it. They would have to take out their hallway, move the hallway over to Kmart's side, and move their front entrance door. And the expense to that is, well, we're back to a standalone facility again. The other part of it is the roof at the mall would need to be changed out to accept, because that's where they want the chiller. So you got to have a load bearer up there. We did look at a couple other areas. Back to the most common sense is the Civic Arena. You can utilize it, put it with your 70,000, put an extra 19,000 square feet on there. You're up to 90,000 square feet that you have available for people from St. Cloud, Twin Cities to come out and use as a venue for a show of some sort. So, and as far as location there, whether it be A, B, C, or D, how close it is to the high school, I'm thinking some way or another would be able to utilize it one way or another, either with graduations or graduation part, however it would be. That would be between the school and the city. So just the Civic Center, I've heard many a times from different people, the Willmar campus. I think it sounds good. I think it's a good spot. I've also, just back to the site selection, and B is my favorite, but I've also been approached by a couple people that are saying, hey, if you get the curling club, what do we do about soccer? Well, you got soccer, you got hockey, you got all this other stuff. So there's a lot of things that could be done out there.
Lots of venues. The membership that you have on here, 160 to 200 and then up to 250, are you being really optimistic, or is that realistic?
I think it's realistic. I think John had put into the book for you with, I talked to Warren, or not Warren, but Ken Warner from the Chamber, and I've talked to also the EDC. They use 100,000 as people that come into the city of Willmar and utilize the city of Willmar. So if they're using 100,000 people that come into town, and we got a member that comes all the way from Hutchinson, could we get from Litchfield? Yeah, we got a team from Litchfield. Can we get from Benson, Murdoch? We got Kirkoven? Yeah, we got Kirkoven. We got New London, Spicer. Can we get Painesville? Probably. Nobody from Bird Island, Olivia. I think that they'd be coming up here. So do I think it's realistic? I think we're under. I think if we were to use the number 100,000, I think we're underestimating.
Okay, and then you do realize that if it is used in the summertime for weddings or whatever, somebody rents the building out, we're competing with the private sector.
I understand that.
All the clubs and
Yep.
that need and want that revenue because they pay taxes and this building wouldn't be paying any taxes.
Correct.
You have to think about that because it's, I don't like the public sector competing with the private sector, and you probably don't either.
I agree with
But
that.
it's quite a project that you guys are proposing. I mean, it's quite an enhanced project, and I understand that a lot of people want a curl, but I question the membership. You're at 110, 106, you said it was? Yeah. And has that been pretty steady for, someone said they've been doing it for 10 years? Is it?
The membership is growing every year. It's growing every year, we're maxed out this year, so every year we've added teams.
Don, can you come to the mic, please?
The membership basically has grown every year. We've added 1-2 teams every year over the last few years until this year. Now we maxed out both leagues. And to max out Thursday night when you have to be there and curl at 5 o'clock, that's a tough thing to do because most people are working yet. So, and we've got enough interest where we've got our 30 teams and turned away people that wanted to join. So yes, we have grown every year, and we're getting more and more people interested. I get calls weekly as I answer the curling phone line. I get calls weekly to find out when they can come up and curl. And Tom mentioned Bird Island. Actually, I had a call from Bird Island this week, wanted to know when they could come up to curl. And so I think there's a lot of people out there that we will get to join the club once we have curling 7 days a week.
Okay, thanks again for your presentation.
Hey, Council, I'm Josh Bernhagen, member and then board member also of the curling club. And Ron, to kind of answer your question, so right now we've got 2 nights of curling with 2 draws on Wednesdays and 1 on Thursdays. When you've got your own club, you would have 7 nights available for curling. And so each night we've got 10 teams. We got 10 teams on Thursday for the draw, and each draw on Wednesday nights are 10 teams each. So let's assume we keep Wednesday and Thursday nights, and we add a night on Monday and Tuesday. If we're able to get 5 teams on each night, that's 40 people. 40 people, excuse me, yeah. So that would reach 146 people. So, and we've still got other nights that we can also add. So back to what Tom was saying, it is probably a generally realistic, if not under, number.
Thank you.
Okay.
Audrey?
Thank you. I'm just curious, some of the other communities that you listed, can you talk about their relationships with either being city-owned and leased or some of the other locations when we talk about that, or is it all over the place?
It's all over the place. Matter of fact, Randy and John might be able to answer this question a little bit better. Brainerd is, they built their own facility. Again, they got gifted $1 million. Chaska is a community-owned facility. And Steve, Enterprise Fund, have you ever heard that before?
Yes.
Okay. So Chaska is an enterprise fund, so it's owned by the city, and then the membership dues actually pay for the facility, and then also what they make off of the bar being there and everything else. Owatonna is, Randy's, he knows better than I do. I've visited and I've talked to on the phone about 6 different facilities, and they are kind of all over the place with how things were built. Owatonna was built in 1974, and they're still using the same building from 1974. that was built on the fairgrounds. How that was done, from what I read online and what I've heard, is that was a fundraiser that was built at that time. So,
Cambridge Fairgrounds, similar situation. So, just to quickly answer that, there's a number of fairgrounds type related facilities kind of in our sphere of influence here. So Tom mentioned Owatonna. There's a 4-sheeter in Cambridge that's been there since the mid-70s. Just across the state border in Superior is another fairgrounds located one. The reason why they end up at a lot of these fairgrounds locations is just because the fair board then says we can use the building during the summer, during the fair, where we need extra facilities. And like has been mentioned here, a lot of times they get involved renting it out. One of the newer constructed facilities would be in a suburb of the city of Milwaukee, but it's the Milwaukee Curling Club, but they have just built an 8-sheeter there. And they actually have extra meeting rooms and everything that they've worked out, but it's all on the county fairground property, for example. So, Scott? Yep, so Mapleton, Mankato, Bemidji, yes, Duluth, where we were just, is part of the deck, if you've heard of that, the Duluth Entertainment Complex. They have multiple, 2 hockey arenas plus the curling over there. To give you an example, in Duluth, of course, Duluth being a little bit more of a long-time hotbed of curling, but I was there last night, and I mean, we had to boot teams off to run our final at 7 p.m. on Sunday night because they had draws starting at 3 in the afternoon, and it went 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and then there was a 9 o'clock draw yet on 8 sheets. That's how big their Sunday night program was even. So once it gets rolling, like I say, the growth, I mean, we're being very conservative, I feel, in our predictions of where the club could go. In my head, I'm going to say in a year or two, it'll be 250 at bare minimum. When Kevin talks about having an open curl night over in Marshall, and I don't know what type of promotion it had, and they get 125 people to show up. I mean, the one thing that hasn't really been brought up is we really haven't been promoting curling here in Willmar because we haven't had to. It goes in the community ed and, newsletter talking about curling being available, and we send out a mailer to all of our members every year, but for the most part, we haven't run Learn to Curl events or anything like that. And now going into Olympic year, almost every club out there has one every month going on right now. So, okay, thank you. One other thing I do want to say. I just want to, when we talk about ice shortage and everything, and obviously, we have been sharing ice with the hockey players and the figure skaters, and having worked with Rob when he came on as a rookie the year that we ran the national, he's been a great guy to work with in managing all of these groups that are asking for more and more ice time all of the time. And so between him and Steve and even the city for being involved with us in being able to rent the facility and displace the hockey and the figure skating when we ran those week-long events the last time, and their cooperation is very much appreciated because it's helped us grow along the process as well. So I just want to thank those guys for working with them as well.
Okay. So if it's privately owned facility, the curling club takes over, are you still considering that you would still have the Friday night, like open curling and the schools coming in and partner with community ed and rec?
yes,
Is that the
yes,
intent?
but it
Okay.
would be not privately owned, actually, it would be owned by the city. It would be a standalone facility that the city does own, is what
Okay.
we're currently proposing.
So those partnerships would still be in place?
Correct.
Because I kind of look at it like the bowling alley, they have leagues, all week long, but you still have to nurture the young people coming up.
That is why it's so important for us to have these schools getting involved. It's
Right.
funny, I told my daughters that I'm chairing this facility and trying to get it built, and they looked at me like I was nuts, but I said I'm still going to do it. But they remember when they had the opportunity to do it and they thought it was a blast.
Right.
So,
Okay, and now, not to totally muddy the waters here, because we haven't discussed this, but if we kind of were looking at the C location, what's the pros and the cons to that location to the north, I call it, northeast, if that was attached to, the Civic Center?
again, we haven't had time to talk about this as a board, and I'm sure that there's some other people on the board that probably have some responses, and I'm hoping they will raise their hands and want to come up and speak also. But the only thing I can see is one, when we're running events, obviously it's going to be tax, but signage can take care of that. I can understand that. I got that. Two is parking. We got to have handicap parking. We have to have access. And when we run these bond spiels and when we run these other events, we're looking at up to about 100 cars could be parked there at any given time. Bond spills are not a 1-day or a 2-day event. They usually run Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, just because I'm curling does not mean that I have 4 or 5 friends that aren't watching. So parking would be the other thing that I would think of. And that's just me. Like I said, if any of these guys have any comments or anything, I wish they'd step forward. So, and then, you know, the city part would be just the additional snow removal and a parking lot of some sort.
I was just thinking for the benefit to the city, if it was attached, then there's more usage for that connection.
Correct. And we've talked about that, and if you've gone out there and walked the hallways, there's hallways and there's locker rooms on the back side that are going to have to be moved and changed around, and then plus you have the concessions in between. So if you got the concessions and you're going to walk through the lobby, you got to get rid of the concessions, the tunnel that's behind it, and the locker room for the Warhawks to be able to get access to go through all that stuff. And Sean can explain all that stuff. I've only ventured the halls once or twice. I haven't gone around it too much. But that would be just my opinion.
So this drawing was provided by staff. That was not a site that you requested? I mean, the original site was on the front of the blue line, so that's not even represented. So this was staff's drawing for you? Because
Correct. And a lot of this is going and stemming off of our meeting that we had December 11th when we had gotten together with the city staff and Audrey and Marv. The original was tilted in front of the blue line so that our entrance would match up with the entrance of the 2 other buildings. And then we thought, again, just because of congestion, A got tilted so that it would be next to the Blue Line Club. And then when we started talking about parking access, when multiple events are going on, that's when D and B came around. C was with the proposal that we just got this last week.
Thanks for coming, Tom.
Appreciate it.
So is there any grants available to your club?
Yes.
Through the association there?
Yes. To tell you the truth, I talked to Representative Baker, and he wants to, as soon as the city says, let's get a shovel going, he wants to meet with Lang and go down to the cities to see if there's something that can be drummed up there. There used to be a program in 2016 is when it got canceled because of budget cuts. It's called the Mighty Duck. And there's a possibility of $150,000 or $140,000 there. We've got Southwest Minnesota Initiative. I had heard that there's some funds out there. We don't know how much. I've got actually one of the gentlemen I curl with used to sit on the board, and he says he could inquire and do some talking there. We also have for all of our monitors and our cameras, there's up to $60,000 in grant money out there to take care of that.
That's just for you then, your club, or for the city? Is there something?
Well, it would be our equipment.
Okay.
Yep, and whatever the city may qualify for. You know, you might qualify for something that we don't. I've talked to Sarah Carlson about, you know, if there's some funds there, and she doesn't know until the paperwork's in front of her. So it's speculation as far as that goes. But just off the top of my head, and some of the programs we've been looking at, there's possibilities up to about 250, 275, which if that's the case, hopefully that'll go towards the 40%. Because if some of this stuff is a year out, 2 years out before we can get at it, if the commitment's there, that'll cover part of that.
Thanks.
Tom, thank you for, did you have something else?
But just in line with that, with, when you've met with your fundraiser, are there standards? You know, when we put out those figures, I think 60% has to be in cash, correct?
Correct, yep.
60% has to be raised.
Yes, 60% in an account and then 40% pledged.
So are there standards with pledges that are looked at, you know, if you're talking about like a 5-year period of time, or have you talked about that with your fundraiser?
We have talked about that, and from what I got from them with the last conversation, there's no cookie cutter. Everything's a little bit different depending upon the project and the interest that you're going to find within the first couple months. Okay. We also have on an advisory, Jill from the YMCA. She's going to help us out with how we should be doing things. And I've also talked to a couple people at the barn when the barn was doing their fundraising as to how they did things. Why reinvent the wheel? If it worked for them, why shouldn't it work for us?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have a couple questions for staff. So first is if staff could explain the impact of having the curling facility and its impact on the city's need for a third sheet of ice. And in other words, I'm sure it's going to alleviate some stress from the other ice-related programs. And then secondly, there's a similarity between the curling club and what you're trying to do now and when the Blue Line facility was built. And I don't know all that history, and I'm sure that that's going to come up in questions as the community members are talking, and I'm just wondering if someone could give us some of that history.
Sean, do you want to handle that, or do you want? Sean, okay.
I can start anyway, and then people can fill in where I miss. For the first question on the third sheet, I think it was pretty well covered by the curling group. It would absolutely help with numbers and with, you know, add to Rob's chaos on the scheduling, I suppose. But they would, the additional ice would bring in people, and there's different groups available that have proposed ice times and organizations and different, like you said, open curling, more bonspiels, things of that nature. So I think third sheet of ice would help in that nature, because it would allow more people to experience all the different ice sports available at the facility. As far as the Blue Line, I did get a little bit of history in the meantime while we were discussing here. The building itself was purchased in '97 and was a used building, and it was at the fairgrounds, I believe, and then built on the site by, as one person put it, by the dads of the youngsters that were having to skate at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. And so they built it on the site in '98, and then they proposed to the city to turn it over in '03, and then the city took that over in '04. When it was originally put together, it was a simple building, and it was non-refrigerated ice, so just on a sand floor, so natural ice. And then it was later, and I believe that system was used when it was put in. And so the system that's there now is getting plenty old. But as far as that goes, then it was the local option sales tax funds that put the connection between the two buildings, and that was expanded after the sales tax was approved. And this is, again, before my time, so I'm going off of what I've tried to gather over the years. But then the expanded vestibule area, the expanded entry-level area, the concessions and things of that nature, and locker rooms that Tom had talked about were all part of that sales tax option.
Rob, do you want to just answer maybe the conversation we had on Thursday night with the group about the feeling of, would there be a need for a third sheet of hockey ice or third sheet of ice out there if the curling club went in? Could you address that, or aren't you comfortable doing that?
I feel if we don't need the third sheet of hockey ice, if we have two designated of sheets for hockey, we'll be perfectly good. But talking with the association of figure skaters, they'd be comfortable with 2 sheets of ice.
Does that help?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we get a calendar of scheduled ice events, like for this past year, from whenever the ice went on till now, or till we close in March or whatever it is? Could we get a calendar of scheduled so we can physically see, this is what's been going on there, and they're squeezed for time on ice because of this, and the ice skaters, the figure skaters and the hockey people are being squeezed out. We got the Warhawks out there taking time, and I'm sure they got a busy schedule out there also during the day, and then the high school at night. But could we get that so we could physically see this is how
We could do that.
squished we are?
I mean, we keep, obviously, we keep records of scheduling and reserve and everything, and we can.
That's good to know.
Put that calendar, and we can give you a copy of that.
Thank you.
If you can make sure we have all that, and the sooner we can have that, the better for digesting.
Just one thing, I want to make sure that when you look at the calendar before the curlers use the ice, we need prep time, and that takes away from any of the high school or grade schoolers. Okay.
Just a concern, it'd be great to have that information, but it doesn't tell you what you can't use because it isn't available with the schedule. And also just putting Convention and Visitors Bureau hat on, these events that you're talking about bring real dollars into our community. Tourism is one of the, forget where we're at, right below agriculture with that. And so I think even though if we look at the calendar to see how busy we are, it doesn't tell you the potential. It also doesn't tell you the people that are getting in the car to go somewhere else for practice ice because they can't get on the ice. So I think those are real figures too that I hear about from different hockey associations and different groups.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One other thing, we all know that hockey is expensive. What are the other costs for curling? Yeah, there's a annual fee of $200, I think it was. And what else is there? What do people have to
What do you
spend
have to
get
pay
in?
for if you show up at our
Yeah, I mean,
doorstep?
you got shoes, you got a broom, what else you got?
Give
Gloves
me
and a
two
hat.
$100 bills and you can use all of my equipment.
2 $100 bills?
2 $100 bills.
Okay, that's pretty reasonable.
It is very reasonable.
think the
So
public knows.
if you become a member, we have the brooms. Oh, if the picture's not up there. But the brooms that they use to sweep with and the stones are all owned by the club. Now, if you want to get into it like the majority of us are, because we're all pretty much addicted, you can get your own shoes, which the shoes can be anywhere from $150 up to $1,000, just depends upon how much you want to spend. And that's not necessary. You can get by with tennis shoes. You don't need to have the special shoes. And a broom, if you want to buy your own broom, again, figure $140, $150 for an average one. But again, you can buy your own broom for $60, $70, or you can spend the big bucks. But
I've been
if
out
you
there.
came knocking on my door, and I'm sure you guys would love to get you on the ice, Ron, we could get you out there with just your tennis shoes.
You probably
Well,
have-
I shouldn't say that. A little bit more than just tennis shoes. But anyway, yes, that's all it takes.
Couple $100, okay.
Yep.
It's good for the public to know.
It's truly inexpensive sport when you consider the months that we run, the time that you can be out on the ice to do things, and the age that you can actually do this at. I don't know what our oldest member is, but I do know that 2 weeks ago we celebrated Tom Stoffel's birthday and he was 70 years old. Very active. Oldest is 72 or 73. But Tom is very active on the ice, loves to curl. And then as far as the youngest ones, juniors and jacks? Oh, Jenna. That's in league. So competition, and you were asking, do I feel we can get the numbers? When you start looking at an age group of 16 to 73, I'm kind of hoping we can get the numbers.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Tom, I just want to thank you guys, your club. I know that when we had this first conversation, it goes back 3 years. And you guys were very patient to get this in front of the council, but a number of things we want to get done to get it right. And I think you guys have done it right tonight. You've done a very good presentation. It's very thorough. It's very accurate. I think your numbers are very much within the parameters of what needs to happen to make it happen. And so I look forward to this moving forward. We're going to have a little conversation as the council now, and we'd like you to stick around for that conversation. And then hopefully we'll give you a little bit of a nod, and then we'll have it on our agenda for next Monday night for if the council wants to move that fast or not. It'll be up to the council to decide. So thank you and your team for putting this all together and bringing it to us, and a very good presentation. So thank you very much. So.
Thank you. Can I ask one question? Now, when it goes in front of the council next Monday, what is it being proposed as being?
That's the next conversation we'll have right now.
Thank you.
You bet. Sure. So, council, we've heard the presentation from the curlers. We've got the information in front of you. You were given the information 2 weeks ago, so you had a chance to review it so that you're prepared for this evening. And what they would like to see from us is a commitment from the city to say, yeah, we want you to do something, and so they can start with their fundraising. One of the things that's really important for them is the fact that the Olympics is coming. And the Olympics generally sees a nice bump for curling because, as we've heard, curling is followed very heavily through the Olympics. And I think part of the reason why that is that you can be at any age and compete at the Olympic level in curling. And I think that's one of the draws for the viewership. So what they'd like from us is a little bit of a nod of, do we think we're heading in the right direction? Do we not think we're heading in the right direction? And then possibly, if the council is ready for next Monday night, to then say, yes, we will work with the curlers to develop a site, to develop a lease, and that will all then be brought back to us for approval. But they're kind of looking to us for a nod tonight of, yeah, they're heading in the right direction. If there's more information you want, they want to hear that. And then, so we know where we're going from there. So, Councilmember Osmus.
Okay, thank you. What I would be, what I would be interested in is what is the city's commitment? And on page 18, we have the property, the site prep, and the parking lot that the city has provided. But let's say if they're at their 2 million mark, they can't get to the 60% in hand or the 40% commitment. What are we out if they are not able to raise that money?
So there have been no hard commitments made to them yet. What they were told is it has to come to this body to make a hard commitment. The only hard commitment we made to them is that we told them that we would give them the land, we told them that we would give them the connections, and we told them that we'd do up to $15,500 in soil corrections if the location was where it originally was proposed, which it's all 4 of these proposals are different than that.
Right.
And so that would be up to the council to say this is what we want to put on the table. But their understanding is that they have to have 60% in hand, and that the other 40% has to be pledged before we go on the ground.
Okay.
So all of those agreements have to be in place.
So we'd be paying for borings, but we're just out now as staff time in the research of some of the stuff they've done for expenses.
Mr. Christensen, we did the soil borings, and that was right around 6,000, if I remember right. Can you help me with the number if you remember?
I can't help you with the number. That sounds about right, yeah, 5,500 to 6,000.
So that's what we've spent up to this point. We did, because we wanted to do those soil borings in that one area. So that's all we've expended, plus staff time at this point. Is that right? Plus staff time,
That's
yes.
correct.
Right, yeah. And we haven't paid anything for the financial evaluation, right? Up to this point, right? Councilmember Maskey.
I didn't need to be sold on the merits of curling. I think that was a very good presentation, and I think the future is bright. I needed to hear about the numbers, and it sounds as if that groundwork is laid, and I think that sounds like a very fair proposition that's been presented. The only question I have remaining is, of course, the location of this facility and how does it benefit the city as well as the curling. I think it's very clear, at least to me after this evening, is exactly what the curlers need in a facility. And I think we're cognizant of that. And so if you're just looking at as far as the financials are concerned, this is not a very big risk to the city whatsoever at this juncture. We have no idea where it will go. It can fluctuate, obviously, but I think our staff needs to chime in of what they think as well, and we move forward. With having this much skin in the game from the curlers' end, it seems like a very good proposition.
I was ready to do it 3 years ago, so it sounds like Willmar is the place they want to be and not Spicer, so.
Yes, and I guess I didn't say that, but their board did vote to locate in Willmar if the details could get worked out. And so, so everything's in Willmar's court right now. And if we tell them no, then they'll look elsewhere. But right now, all the balls are in our playing field. And if we fumble the ball, it's our fault, not theirs. So yeah, they are here now. I think I'm speaking correctly, right? Right. Sure.
Thank you,
Councilman
Mr. Mayor.
Christensen.
That 60% cash in hand, is that of the 2.2 that we're talking about?
It's of the total project number once it has been put together. We don't know what that number is yet. So they put a proposal together to us in a couple of weeks because we were hoping to have this in front of the council in December, but it didn't happen. And so if we give them the nod, they will then go and get hard numbers. Then they would have to have 60% of that hard number in hand.
Okay, then additional information I would like to see is future costs of staff time out there. What's it going to cost us? They're going to have it 7 months, we're going to have it 5. You know, from liability to utilities to staffing out there. What are we going to be cleaning it all that time? And then does somebody have to be there since it's a public facility when they're doing their curling? Do we have to have a staff person there?
I don't believe they would. I mean, we would leave that up to Rob and his team to decide what they felt needed to be done. But, you know, so we'd look for an answer on that from you, Rob, what your thoughts were on that. So, and then Ike, did you get the questions he had?
I did, and they're going to be part of the proposal, so I didn't have to write them down. They're going to be part of the proposal, and as far as, you know, it's just like the Stingers out there at the baseball diamond. They can go out there and play. We don't have to have a staff person out there. We would do that all the time with our facilities. So do we have to have a staff person if we build this facility? No, it would be terms of the contract. There's responsibilities and liabilities that they would be required to do. But that would all be factored in also, like I said, when we do the final proposal, one of the things that I'm going to be concerned about is when we write the contract. And it's going to be very difficult to do this far out because of the unknowns. But we'll do our best so that they have the information so that they know. I think it's important that we write the contract up front. We don't want people raising money and making drawings and all of this, and then all of a sudden we get to a lease and there's no agreement. So I think it should be done side by side, would be my recommendation.
But I mean, we'll have the cost, our future cost then in there of what to staff it for those 5 months?
You can have estimates, sure. We can, everything from the electrical cost to the maintenance cost, we can give estimates.
I mean, and then the building is the least of my worries of a cost. I mean, it's like giving you an elephant here, all I got to do is feed it.
You can go broke on free stuff, right?
Yes, you can. But I mean, it's the future cost to the taxpayers, because I know the city's going to benefit from this, there's no doubt about it.
Right.
As the curling club will, as the local surrounding area will. But it also is there's going to be a cost involved
Yes.
to the city, and hopefully we can recoup some of that by using it for whatever, renting it out and for whatever we can.
Right.
Speaking of that, will there be large doors going into this building? So if they're going to have some kind of a automobile show in there?
It should be designed for multiple use.
Okay.
Would be prudent.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Bach said there would be one large door. The thing of it is, too, that I think it's important when you bring that up, Councilmember Christensen, is that I talked to Beth Fisher about that, and we're right at the limit of not being able to apply for a lot of dry floor events because we don't have enough square footage of dry floor. And this would give us the ability to bid on a lot of dry floor events that we could have if we keep it in close proximity to the other building, because now they can say on that piece of property, we have X number of square feet, and that will allow us to bid out a lot of other things. I would also echo what Councilmember Christensen said, is that we don't want this to compete against the private industry. We don't want it competing against the, the conference center and the Green Mill and the, the Oaks, we want private industry to prosper here, and we want other things to come in to fill this gap. And so, yeah, I would not be in favor of us putting up a building that's going to compete with those entities, so.
One other comment, and that would be, I would suggest location B, just for the sight lines of a campus out there too. I mean, I know it's just more expensive to bring the utilities over there, but it sure looks a lot better instead of having it staggered around the building. And the parking and everything is there also. Just my opinion.
And so I think what we would hope to be able to do then on next Monday night would be to maybe select a location after we hear from staff on what their recommended is. And then, we had committed to them that we were going to put the utilities in. And so, if we're going to add an additional expense, we're going to have conversation about that as well. There might be other people that think of different locations, so let's keep those conversations for the next meeting. Otherwise, I think we get into a pretty lengthy discussion on, without having heard from staff what their recommendation is, so. Councilmember Nelson.
I just want to say thank you to the curlers, but I wonder if the curlers have what they need, or is there anything else you need from us as we look to the next week here?
You can always ask.
Just write it out. Yeah.
So what I'm seeing here, and tell me if I'm not seeing this right, but I'm seeing that we have an affirmative action coming from the council, and it appears to me to be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, let me know in a little bit here. So, but you can go forward. Councilmember Plowman is not here, but in the past, he has spoke favorably of this. He has to be excused from this evening's meeting. He had I think he was watching his kids, I think he said, in the email he sent me. So, and we know how important that is, particularly with illnesses going around. So I think you have the blessing that you were looking for. And so what I would encourage you to do is get together with whoever you're going to use for a general and maybe get some more solid numbers if you could. And then get back with us, get back with Mr. Holland, actually. And then we'll be putting that agenda together on Thursday. He needs it by Wednesday morning at 10.
This week, we need it by Wednesday.
At what time? 10, right?
I'm confused. Yeah, Wednesday. 10 o'clock.
Yep, 10 o'clock Wednesday. If you have anything updated, get them to him 10 o'clock Wednesday. Otherwise, Holland, yes. Sure. Anything else that the council wishes, Councilmember O'Brien?
Yeah, I'd like to echo everybody else. Appreciate you guys coming in and talking about the project. Very exciting. I think it's going to add to that regional flair that Willmar wants. Hearing you describe teams from Paynesville, possibly Bird Island, Litchfield, that gets me very excited. Not only for you guys, but for the business community, because then they're going to see what we have in town. So thank you for your sticking with it and giving us an opportunity to hear what you had to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything else on this item? Let's take a brief recess and reconvene. Come back at 7:15.
Thanks for all your work on it.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a Civic Center ice replacement program, and we have our city engineer, Mr. Sean Christensen. We are running a little late here tonight, but thank you from Stevens Engineering and Springsteads for sticking around. So hopefully we'll have you out of here by 10 o'clock. So, Mr. Christensen.
That puts a lot of pressure on me. As most of you have seen this presentation a couple weeks ago, I believe, I'm going to go through that again, and it is a refrigeration project specifically for the Civic Center, and we'll present the three options. I've got Scott Ward here with Stevens Engineering for specific technical questions if those come up, but my understanding is we'll discuss which option to move forward with so that Stevens' crew and Scott's crew can get going on this, and we can move forward on this project. All right, which button do I hit? Arrows? Oh, there we go. All right, so as you'll recall, I'll give a quick rundown of it. We've got three different options, two of which would be a two-sheet refrigeration system, facility to run 2 sheets of ice, and a third option that would be overbuilt, if you will, for a third future sheet at this, within the same refrigeration system. So as a rundown, basically what happens is most people will look at the bottom line. So this is a $2.5 million projected cost for this option A. Option A is 2 sheets of ice, basically replaces both systems we currently have that run 2 separate sheets. This will be one system that will run both rinks that are currently there. It effectively replaces everything that we've currently got, and with the Blue Line and the Civic Center Cardinal Arena. Option B is that same 2-sheet system, but it adds an expanded Zamboni room, resurfacer room, as called for in this budget sheet. What that does is it allows us to reuse some of that heat exchanger, so that the ice, the snow that comes off the ice, dumps into a facility, all inside a building, and then that heat exchange is used and designed into the system. What happens currently at the Blue Line facility is we have to drive the Zamboni. Rob's crew has to drive the Zamboni outside, dump the ice and snow, drive it back inside, and then of course wash down the machine, the tires, and et cetera, to get back onto the ice. And that is done every time, and as you heard earlier, potentially every hour when there's hockey games going on, that they're doing this. And so by raising their door, you can understand that a lot of loss of heat if it's below 0 outside, as well as the system itself trying to wash that equipment down. By adding a little bit of space to that resurfacer room, it adds a couple $100,000, so you're at 2.7 million in round numbers for that project B. Project 3 adds the third sheet of ice, and this is the one, if you'll recall, that I was proposing the last time we did this. It also adds that additional resurfacer room. So if you'll visualize, do I have the mic back? I do. Visualize the same footprint, or a little bit expanded footprint, the same resurfacer room that I discussed in Project B or in Option B, but this would be expanded piping, expanded compressors, and things of that nature to run a future third sheet of ice if desired. This is a little bit of a breakdown of what those future buildings may look like, and I think the next slide, if I remember right, actually has, it kind of shows a little bit less. The next 2 slides show a little bit aerial view, but on the left is Project A, and that is, again, replacing exactly what we have, but still driving, for lack of a better explanation, still driving the Zamboni outside to dump the snow and ice out of that equipment. So this is B and C projects or assumes that the location of that refrigeration system is in roughly the same vicinity that it is now. You can see on the left side of each of those slides is the Blue Line Arena. At the bottom right corner is the Cardinal Arena. And so that kind of gives you some indication of where that might be located. So it's in the back of the current facility. You can see by the shaded colors the expanded room on B. And then, of course, both rooms are expanded on option C. More of an aerial view, and this is another, actually it looks like another option, maybe rotating that refrigeration system 90 degrees. Again, some of that is yet to be determined based on the options that you guys choose for A, B, or C. This might be the best picture to leave it on so that you can get a good idea of vicinity of where that will be located and size based on the buildings that are there. You can see that it does not take up that much room and actually will not even be visible to any of the public. As far as the public's concerned, if there's ice down and the refrigeration system's working, nobody's the wiser, and it just works. Oh, I did have, look at this here, see? Surprise to me even. I've got some numbers for you, you guys had asked for, and I had these in a different location, but just as an idea, this kind of gives you a rundown of the participation in just in the ICE programs, and I can provide this to you as well. We've got 125, these are round numbers obviously, 125 participants for the CER, Hockey Association numbers. We've got 105 participants in the other hockey association, which would be the club sports up through the bantam level. We've got 65 participants in the high school boys and girls, and then 190 participants in the adult league, and that's just 2 nights a week. And then junior hockey, of course, has 25 participants in that, for a total of 510.
Sean?
We're
Could I add, we've got figure skating numbers later this afternoon, and they were 65 to 80 kids the last 5-year history of figure skating, somewhere between 65 and 80 kids.
okay. So we're at so we're pushing that 600 participants in the hockey and figure skating, and that's assuming also a 10 to 15%, or seeing actually a 10 to 15% growth since 2012. Oh, and this is summer ice projection. So we can go into as much or as little detail as you want on that if we want to discuss that tonight or at a later date. If you want to stick with the refrigeration system, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I know Scott would as well.
Can you get those last 2 slides emailed out to us? I don't think it was included in our document. Some of the council members received it on an email from Matt Dawson. I don't recall seeing that.
Nope, we just put this slide together this afternoon late, so I will get that out to you.
Just get it out to us then, if you would.
This looks better than the email we had, so this is what we built it off of, so.
Perfect, great, thank you. Okay, so council, the recommendation from staff is that we go with the 3-sheet option plus the building. And, well, I'll open up to council first, otherwise I have a couple questions if they don't come up. So, Councilmember Nelson.
The information that's on the agenda report is different than the information that's on here. It talks about project B and C have 3 sheets of ice with the new vestibule and electrical room. And the figures that are on the car report are different than the figures that are on here. But my real question is it possible to do the 3 sheets of ice, or the 2 sheets with the capability of the 3rd sheet of ice, and not do the expanded resurfacer room at this time until you would decide to do a 3rd sheet of ice?
Short answer is anything's possible. I can tell you that by not doing it with one project, it will cost more money. But the short answer is yes, you could do
Just
any
weighing-
combination that you want to do.
So the figures are different, but just clarification, so is B and C are not both 3 sheets of ice? B, it's just C?
Correct.
Okay, because that's not what it says on the car report.
So show me where that is in the carport, and this is something that I missed
Third
apparently.
paragraph down, base project B and C both provide a building expansion and combined refrigeration system capacity for 3 sheets of ice with a new vestibule and electrical room.
Yes, that's incorrect. They both provide the vestibule and electrical room. Only C provides the 3rd sheet.
Okay, let's go with the assumptions of the information that you presented to us
Yep.
tonight.
I misspoke in the car form. That's my fault.
Sure. And so the 2 sheet without the building is 2.519. The two sheets with the building is 2.697, and the three sheets with the building is 3.284.
Correct.
So those are the three things that we have in front of us. Those are the numbers that we want to use for our discussion this evening. So if everybody has those, so that we know we're all speaking from the same sheet of information. So Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, after hearing the curling club wants a standalone building and their own ice machine, I don't see why we would go the option C. I would say B would make a lot of sense. So the Zamboni doesn't have to go outside. I don't think we're going to need a third sheet down the road. The hockey numbers that were given to us are somewhat misleading. The increase, what he said, 12%
10 to
increase.
12%. 10 to 15.
That increase is in beginners. As they go from, by the time they get up in 4th and 5th grade, they're going from 36 to 16 people participating. A lot of parents bring their young kids out there when they're 4, 5, 6 years old, 7, and start hockey. And as they progress in the next grade, they drop out. I mean, I know I've got grandsons that are playing, and several on his team this year aren't going to play next year. And he's in 4th grade. So they drop. And the Willmar Hockey Association hasn't grown at all since 2012. It's 109, 103, 105, 108, and 105 people participating. So the third sheet, I don't see it happening. And most communities our size or a little larger and a little smaller, I don't believe we've seen one that's got 3 sheets. I think that's what Mr. Brizendine at least told us in his report to us. But I don't see the need for 3 sheets. I think 2 are going to be fine. Even Rob told us tonight that there'd be plenty for figure skating and all the hockey teams, because they're taking 2 nights a week, the curlers, is that what it was?
Right
So,
now.
so if we get that back for hockey, we'll have that much more time. And I don't know how many hours that involves. How many hours does curling take when
It said in some
they
of
say?
the stuff, it said 5 hours, but then you still have ice prep time too. But
Which
as
is
far as
probably another-
on-ice curling,
Yeah,
I think
another-
they had 5 hours.
So it's like 10 hours total. Is that what you're saying?
Per day.
5 hours to prep and then 5 hours?
No, they had like the 4 hours the one night and,
That was just curling.
yes.
That wasn't prep.
That doesn't include the prep.
Right.
And then they gotta,
They
then
never
they gotta
did
flip
say
it
how
back.
long the
They
prep
gotta flip
was,
it back
yeah.
too. But that goes pretty quick, right? You can skim that off with one pass, right?
Well, what the curlers do is on Wednesday, 5 o'clock, we start prepping it. And that takes about an hour and a half, and then they start their league at 7. And then they keep it set up all the way through Thursday when they have their adaptive program and their next league. And then we shave it off at 7:15.
So about a day and a half then that they're using it.
Yep.
On one pass?
It stays set up, once they set it up on Wednesday, it stays up until we take it off. Yes, one Zamboni.
One Zamboni pass takes off the curling ice, puts it back to hockey ice.
Correct.
Is that what we're all understanding?
I would like to clarify something, respond to Mr. Christensen, if I may. Go ahead and ask the rest of your questions first if you want. I got it jotted down.
I just want, I'm trying to get, on Thursday night, Councilmember Alvarado, city administrator, and some staff members were at a meeting, and it was very clear at that meeting that if we went with a standalone curling facility, that there was only be the need for the 2 pieces of ice. And I think we heard that tonight, Mr. Brizendine, I'm sure, I think you were in agreement on Thursday night as well, but, is that where we're at? Is that we're in agreement with that?
Yes, I would agree with how you're stating that. My comments would be that as we are looking at this big picture, the thing that has not been brought up yet this evening is the fact that there's a consulting firm that's been hired by the city that's going to start a process about looking at the whole Civic Center site and how we're moving forward with that. So when you look at a proposal that has 2 or 3 sheets of ice on it, that's why that is a placeholder there, is that third sheet ice, because you've got options that we are going to consider, at least our staff's perception is, that would be considered when you start looking at the study and the players that come to the table to help us with that study on what's the future of the Civic Center site, because that's what we've enlisted the services of that entity to do. Thus, I think the direction that staff's going to need, if I'm hearing what's taking place tonight and some urgency on the curling facility, I don't know why we would continue with a full-blown study of the Civic Center, because we're already making one determination that hasn't, come into play with the consultant yet. But that's why you're seeing us with the proposal, because there could very well be the thought process through the study, at least this is where Sean and I and Scott and Rob have had discussions, is does it make sense to build a new curling facility like has been proposed earlier this evening, or does it make more sense to build a hockey facility that has the infrastructure built correctly to accommodate year-round ice, and then the Blue Line Center would potentially be the curling facility. So I think those are the things that staff have been discussing for the last few months as we've been readying ourselves to start the process of looking at the Civic Center site. So that's why you're seeing, Ron, you're right, that we don't need a third sheet ice if the curling facility is going to be a standalone. Staff hadn't gotten there yet because we're, just starting that process.
Sure.
Well, I think part of it is too, is when did we ask for that study to be started? How long ago was that? The Civic Center facility.
Yeah, I'm not sure when you asked for that study to be done, because it wasn't in the capital plan, and so we proposed it last fall, and we got going on it probably late last fall, I would say, with the proposals, or with the RFPs.
And the curling club's been at the table for 3 years. Yep. So, over 3 years, actually.
Back and forth between Willmar and Spicer, yep.
Correct, right, yeah. And they didn't come to Willmar, to Councilmember Fagerly's comment earlier this evening. They didn't come to us and say they're locked into Willmar probably, when was it, November?
Maybe even before then.
But, so anyways, okay, I'm not sure where we go with that information. I mean, are we going to wait for the study to come back? Councilmember Nelson, followed by Schwantes.
So I asked this question at our last meeting, because if I understand correctly, the ice plant, what's being proposed, will not be complete until the ice season in 2019.
That's not entirely correct.
That's one option.
No, the last option I gave was would be complete in the spring of 19, for the summer of 19. But the ice would currently exist as it does today for the 18 season.
For the 18 season?
Correct.
Okay. So.
Correct. So spring of 19, the new system would be complete.
So I'm struggling with doing the right thing. We need ice. We need to do this ice plant. We need to look to see what we need to the future. But the conversation that was just had is a conversation that we had 2 years ago. I mean, with the curlers, with all of this, and we've gone back and forth and back and forth. I'm concerned that we only do 2 sheets of ice. The curlers have to go out and raise their funds. If we're the city and we're looking at what happens if the curlers end up staying in our facility, or what happens if the curlers leave, we can't answer that one right now. But is there a way to protect ourselves without spending another $600,000 in the budget? That's why I asked the question before. And if the group that was meeting last Thursday night wants to take a look at that study and to look at other aspects out at the Civic Center, then we shouldn't be making decisions right now because we don't know what that comes. I still have a question whether we should be putting more of an investment into the Blue Line arena. I believe in the 5-year capital improvement program, there's like $400,000 or $375,000 for insulation. Well, depending on all of how these pieces put together, that's why we needed this study done. And now we're sitting contemplating when we don't have all the cards, and it sounds like a very ambitious group out there looking for other possibilities out there. So I'm concerned that we do the right thing for the future, but is there a way to somehow protect ourselves? Do we have to decide this right now in order to accomplish having the ice done at the same time?
Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually wondering what I'm going to say, because my original intent was, as the public is listening at home, they may get the sense that we had not thought this through. But we as a council decided that we did in fact need this ice plant to be up and working. We had limited time to be able to do that. We did not want to find ourselves without ice for major events, and so we would move forward with the ice plant, knowing that the master plan was still coming for the Civic Center. So that was an intentional decision that this council made.
Go ahead.
I can agree with Councilmember Schwantes, but that's before we were being asked between 2 sheets of ice and 3 sheets of ice. I can see a need for the 3rd sheet of ice, possibly. I just don't know that we have all the cards on the table to know what we need right now.
Can I just,
Councilmember Rasmus.
thank you. I just want one clarification. If we're talking the 3 sheets of ice, that isn't in addition to if a standalone facility happens for the curlers. It is. See, to me, what I thought he just said was, if we looked at the other sheet of ice, that would be the 2 for hockey, the curlers would stay with the Blue Line Center.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yes. So that's when we're talking about a 3rd sheet of ice.
We're talking about the
it's
curling ice.
Really, it's a 2nd sheet of ice, of hockey ice, and the curlers stay in the Blue Line Center.
That's
We're not
one
talking
option.
about 4 sheets, we're still talking 3. Okay.
I didn't
I think we need that
understand
clarification.
Okay, so I apologize if it hasn't been clear. So a couple things here we need to I've tried to jot notes down. First, let's talk about the definition between dedicated and standalone. Okay, so to me, standalone is a separate building, separate system, separate everything. I don't think, in fact, even here in the curlers say dedicated was the term they used. I think it can be a dedicated sheet of ice attached to an existing building. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is, you're exactly right. There is currently not a need for a 3rd sheet of hockey or figure skating ice. That is a correct statement.
Is or is not?
Is not.
Okay.
My proposal has been all along that build this system for 3 potential sheets of ice. That 3rd sheet could be anything. Now, the other thing we can do, we can add this as an alternate in the bid process and put the capacity in the system and not build the system for a 3rd sheet until the plan comes out and decide what to do with that. If to build a 3rd building, let's say, near enough to use this system. My proposal has always been the 3 sheets, because if the city is going to maintain the system, we don't have enough staff to run additional building and additional maintenance and additional wear and tear on an additional system. I've proposed 1 system, and that's still my proposal, even based on the comments that we're receiving here tonight. 2 of the locations that were provided earlier for the potential locations for curling could be attached to or very near the existing building out there and use the same refrigeration system. The new systems will act much like they do in a house, where you have 3 levels of a house and 3 different temperatures on all 3 levels of the house. You can set the systems up. They're all controllable that way. You can change a different temperature on different sheets of ice.
So,
Councilmember Christensen.
thank you. The third sheet you're thinking of would be a hockey arena.
The third sheet could be anything you want it to be.
Okay, but say it's a hockey arena.
Okay.
I think I'm reading your mind.
Okay?
And we might agree on this. And then the Blue Line Club would be the curling only. That's
Could
it,
be,
curling
absolutely.
only. So this new hockey arena, and I like hockey. I really enjoy it thoroughly, not just because of my grandkids, but I go out to every Warhawks game, and I enjoy it. That third sheet would be a hockey arena only, and I don't know if you've thought down the road, but what would something like that cost versus the curling building that they're talking about, the 2.2 million? What would a third sheet actually cost if the city was going to undertake this?
To
Would it
build
be
the,
4 million, 5 million, 3 million? Do you have any idea?
Let's go, I'll let Scott.
Just happened to be here.
Hi, good evening.
You need to qualify that because you got other amenities that you would put there, and I think Scott will probably do that, because what's your capacity, bleachers, things like that, locker rooms, because that adds, you know, how big.
No,
is
I
the
understand
shell.
that, yeah.
So he'll give you the numbers as they've built a fair amount of them.
Sure. So, good evening, Scott Ward with Stevens Engineers. So a third sheet, if you're looking at just a practice sheet, minimum seating, minimum locker rooms and so forth, you're probably looking at close to 6 million project cost, 5, 6 million, maybe 5 million. So they are expensive. That would be a precast structure. So that's similar to Cardinal Arena, not to the Bowling Club, which is a pre-engineered metal building. The curling facility is looking at a pre-engineered metal building. So those costs are a little bit different, but they are more costly than the numbers that the curling club was bringing up. So
You said just a practice rink.
a practice sheet,
I'm
so that'd be
thinking of,
one sheet of ice. Well, it would be one sheet of ice. It would be minimum seating, maybe 200 seats. 4 locker rooms, maybe some, you know, a coach's room, Zamboni room. The refrigeration system, it'd probably be on the low end because the refrigeration system is already kind of built into these numbers here that we're talking about tonight. So maybe you're looking closer to 5.5 million.
because my idea was it would be the glamorous, it would be the main sheet out there.
Well, if you're, yeah.
And then we're talking a lot, $10 million.
Then the number could go, yeah, then the
Okay.
number could go, I mean, you know, if, yeah, I mean, then the number could go up as
Okay, that's
as
what I
much
need.
as seating. as the
That's
seating.
what I needed to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And a couple things just to clarify, I think might help you clarify a little bit. On the refrigeration side, when you're looking at option C, when you're looking at putting in capacity for that third sheet, whatever that is, curling or ice, whatever it might be, there's a couple ways to do that. These numbers include putting all the equipment in at once, all the equipment in there to serve all 3 facilities. You could prep this refrigeration system, just upsize the equipment that absolutely needs to be upsized for that third sheet, and you're probably looking at construction costs of about $175,000 to do that, to prep it for that third sheet, and then whenever that third sheet gets built, whether it's curling or ice or whatever it might be, then you put the additional equipment in there, so you're going to have some equipment costs in the future. But altogether, that is much more efficient, less costly to do that as one system than to do it as 2 separate systems. And it's pretty substantial savings as well as energy savings. Anytime you can serve multiple sheets of ice with one refrigeration system is going to be much more efficient to operate than 2 separate systems. And we can design the flexibility in to meet the temperatures that the curling needs, to meet the temperatures that the ice users need, figure skating needs. We do this all the time with multi-sheet facilities, and they can have whatever ice temperature that they need to have for their facility, even if we're operating off of one system.
Councilmember Osmus, followed by Nelson.
Thank you. So if I have this correct, if the curlers, it's only going to cost them $2 million for their facility, partially because they're not going to have the seating and the space. My concern was that we would want that part of the building connected. So as a city, we had access to all 3, that they were connected for dry floor events. That I thought it would be more advantageous. But if it's going to cost $6 million to build another attachment to the Civic Center, that's out of reach.
No brainer.
well,
I mean, the curling club said they would use 40%, would use 40% less of the space. So, I mean, they're building a smaller facility. And so what we're saying here is we're going to take a building, we're going to not use 40% of it, but we're still going to cool it because you can't take and cut part of it out. And we're going to spend $6 million. No, let's just build a curling club for the curlers. Save $4 million.
And to clarify a couple things, when Councilman Christensen asked for what a hockey facility would cost, so the size comes into play. So it's definitely,
Right.
you get a difference there. The other thing is, what the curlers proposed was a pre-engineered building versus a precast building. Okay, so completely different buildings. So there is some not apples and oranges here. So.
So what would it cost for a engineered building?
For an ice rink, I mean, you might be able to save maybe $1 million, maybe 500,000, so it's still a much larger building than what the curlers are looking at.
Sure,
so,
thank you.
I mean, that's the big difference.
Councilmember Nelson.
I don't know where to start. This very conversation took place with the curlers regarding the Blue Line Arena 2 to 3 years ago. And no one supported the conversation about the Blue Line Arena. How long have you guys been working on this project that we have not known about?
Let's state the question, please.
Well, I am asking the question because
And I'm not sure no one that answered that question. I think that within the staff, we've been talking about the potential for the Blue Line for a significant amount of time.
The potential for the Blue Line for what?
To be an option for the curlers. We've talked about that from day one as an option.
Okay, I'm supportive of this project. I'm supportive of it. It just feels like I don't know that we have all the cards on the table. If we're planning for the future of the Civic Center for 10 years or 15 years from now, I don't know what the right thing to do is right now.
I'm giving you my proposal, and that my proposal or my suggestion would be the 3 sheets of ice to build it so that we have the built for the future. And that hasn't changed.
And that's like $600,000 more than what was proposed in the budget 2 months ago.
That's $600,000 more than what the mayor put in the budget. That's not $600,000 more than what staff proposed.
Interesting.
Mayor Calvin, if I could just piggyback some of this conversation and why some of these conversations led that way. Ultimately, the need for summer ice is important, and the curlers don't need that. If they build their own facility, we will still need summer ice, which comes with extended costs to the Blue Line Arena because that facility is not, it can run summer ice, but it's not going to be the most efficient, and it's got potential for issues with the building. Scott, you probably could, lend a little bit more than that, just because it's not a sealed building, and that's why the precast building is so much better. And we can't afford to keep summer ice on the Cardinal facility because of all the other usages of that facility. So that's why you're hearing a lot of this conversation.
Councilmember Osmus, followed by Nelson.
Okay, for some of that use, wouldn't we be, let's say if the curlers did their standalone building, wouldn't we use couldn't we use that building then? If we kept the ice in the Civic Center? Then the dry stuff could be,
You're building the same, they're proposing the same building that the Blue Line Arena is, and I don't think the pre-manufactured steel buildings are the most efficient buildings for summer ice.
no, the summer ice would be in the Civic Center.
But the Civic Center is what,
Isn't it
I'll speak
cement?
to it, but that's where all the dry floor events are. I don't know, and then all the maintenance issues that would come after the dry floor season.
What I'm saying, what I'm asking.
You might be right,
Couldn't those dry floor events that happened in the Civic Center, couldn't they then be in the curling facility?
Some could and some could not, because that's why we have the big ceiling and the big doors and everything like that.
Yeah, not near the capacity. I got your question now, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, the capacity
The
is
short,
not
short answer is some would and some would not.
Councilmember Nelson.
So it's my understanding that group that's meeting is talking about more than just hockey, or more than just, they're talking about a dome, they're talking about AstroTurf, they're talking about lots of different things. I think the other thing that I see is whatever the future for a summer ice, perhaps needs to have a proposal put together to use a local option sales tax option to do those types of things. And that conversation, I think, is different than just replacing the ice system.
I would think that you'd recall that when we did the last local option sales tax proposal, that was part of the discussion leading to that. It didn't make the cut on what was proposed for the local option sales tax, but yeah, that's exactly right. 3 years ago, that was discussed.
Okay, so part of the issue was that the community felt that they were being asked to do a local option sales tax for maintenance things that should have been taken care of. But now if you're coming back with it, so we do the ice plant, now if you're coming back with a proposal to enhance the Civic Center or to wait out the study to see what those other things are that need to be done, that could be funded through a local option sales tax.
I would say yes, that's absolutely true, and they are two completely different projects. The group that's meeting is anticipating involvement in this in the master plan study that has got a kickoff meeting in a week, I believe, or 10 days, 2 weeks, I think. And so they're getting their priorities together. They're getting their stuff together to present to the consultant that we hired to do that facility plan. And so it's completely different projects.
So if we go back to the proposal that was just made about doing the components to preserve the option to do a third sheet of ice at some point in time, what's the price tag on that?
Yeah, are you just saying to upsize the refrigeration system? Is that what?
Well, I'm just looking for options with what has to be done now to preserve the option for a third sheet of ice and what could wait.
Yep, so option C would be the option, except that we would increase, the room would increase, so there, I think there's a cost of, looks like $100,000 to increase the size of the room, and then it'd be about $175,000 on top of that to upsize the refrigeration system, just the key components of it. So you're probably looking at $275,000 plus contingencies and stuff, but.
Less than that?
It would be, this price right here you see on option C, that would be to have all the equipment done at one time, so it could serve a third sheet right away. I'm proposing that there's an option a little bit less costly than this, is just prep the system for the third sheet. Not all the equipment would be installed at this time, but just the key equipment would be upsized to make it easier to install in the future.
A dollar amount between B and C then?
So it'd be a dollar amount between B and C. And that's what we would recommend. If you're not sure about that third sheet and what it's going to be, that to me makes the most sense. And it's an option that we use quite a bit on facilities like this that have potential for growth and so forth. So.
So what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
So what you just said, what I think I understand is that 328 would be dropped by 275, bringing it down to 300 and.
Yes.
3 mil.
3 million, yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Councilmember Fagerly, followed by Osmus.
So what's the life expectancy on this equipment? We could install it and never use it for the third sheet.
Yeah, so the refrigeration system, this is an industrial grade system, so this would be 30-plus years. Your existing equipment was the exact same industrial type system. You got 42 years and 44 years out of that. So, I mean, if it's maintained properly, it can go over 30 years easily. So it's long life, very efficient equipment, very efficient refrigerant. So it's one of the most efficient systems that you could design today.
So if you did add a third sheet, where would you put it, Mr. Christensen?
Can you pull that map back up for us?
This one?
No, the 3 sheets, the one that we had at the first.
It had the 4 options?
It had the 4 options, right?
And I think what I would, while he's finding that, I would still default to the professionals that we've hired to do that exact thing and locating other facilities, other buildings, other options in the area on the campus system, if you will. Keeping in mind that what we hired them to do was not just upgrade the building that's there, but to the entire property that the city and potentially some of the school site, owns as a campus type system. And so of the 4 up there, if that's what you're asking, I don't know if that's what you're asking or not. And again, I'm not a planner.
Well, if I'm doing, for a proposed third sheet, you're better off connecting it then.
If I was, based on that proposal right there, which I agree with, it would be A or C, and either of those pushed up to the existing building. And again, these were shapes set down on an aerial to get an order of magnitude and a visual of what it could potentially look like, as well as get some numbers for utilities to get to those sites.
Okay. So this plan, that probably won't be done until September, October,
We've got a 6-month process on it.
once they start.
Yep. But they have started already. We're getting the kickoff, so they've already been gathering information. They've already been out, and they've met with us and with Stevens when we did the refrigeration system kickoff meeting. So they've been doing some work on it already. This is an official kickoff meeting on the 13th.
I would add that Stevens Engineering is part of that team that is with that firm that is doing this work.
Yep. So if you're planning on having a local option sales tax, then you'd have to have the school involved, because it'll be on their property too. So what kind of process is it?
Well, and that's absolutely correct. And you can see, I didn't see it earlier, but that at the very top of the page, it says approximate property line. And so these proposed possible locations are all within city property. Okay, so that being said.
For the ice, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. That being said, however, with this campus system or this campus facility plan that we're looking at, it's absolutely true that if there are school-specific buildings or city-specific buildings, that any of those would have an option of a local option sales tax.
Yeah. But the plan that the school has, or the group that talking about stuff on school property, they're talking about $30 million. New football stadium, soccer field,
Okay.
softball. With the county going with their local option sales tax, we had no say over it, that's a 0.5% increase. I don't think the residents are gonna add another 0.5% in the next couple of years when we can actually do this, so.
Well, right, it's an option to pursue when those projects are selected to get underway.
Yeah, but it'll be 3-4 years out before you could even bring it to the voters.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, so then what do the curlers do?
I think we've already talked to the curlers about the bonding potential and things of that nature. So some of those conversations have already been taking place as well, outside of local option sales tax.
But they just left here tonight thinking it's gonna be B, D, or A.
Yeah, and I don't know that they had any intention of which one it was going to be, just that it was going to happen, was my impression.
Councilmember Nelson.
So if the curlers go ahead and do their building as was presented, and we put in an ice plant that in the future could involve a third sheet of ice that could be year-round ice, practice ice, built on the backside or whatever, could, if the ice was in the Blue Line Arena now, could the ice plant be reconfigured to take the second sheet of ice from the Blue Line Arena into the new third sheet of ice if the community were to step up to the plate and repurpose the Blue Line Arena for an indoor playground or for some sort of community center space or those types of things? Could you repurpose, could you install the system and then reconfigure it to go into the new one?
I'm not 100% sure what you're asking, but yes, if it's designed for 2 sheets, it can run 2 sheets, regardless of where those are located. If it's designed for 3 sheets, it can run 3 sheets, regardless of where those are located. But then comes into play the distance that those sheets of ice are to run that glycol system. So unless I'm not answering the question you're asking, I'm not understanding correctly.
I guess I'm just trying to think ahead of what are some other options to repurpose the Civic Center for the future. And year-round ice is something that, you know, you were talking about 300,000 of insulation to get 1 more month out of ice in the Blue Line Arena last year, I believe it was, or whenever, with that. So what happens if you wait for the study and you find out, you know, that maybe the Blue Line should be repurposed for something else? The curlers go ahead and raise their funds to do their facility. Because when we had this conversation before, you know, we had a conversation about the Blue Line Arena, and you can't just give it to the curlers and then have the city taxpayers pay for something else with that. So I'm just trying to think outside of the box and to think about long-term. What does a civic center, what does this community need for a civic center 20 years from now? And where are we investing our funds? And I don't know that we're ready to make that decision.
Councilmember Osmus.
Okay. I think it's clear that we don't need a 3rd sheet of ice for hockey and ice skating. They even stated that tonight. So if we needed the ice-making capacity for 3 sheets, that's only because we are giving, either we're giving, the Blue Line Center is going to go to the curlers, or we're building another one, which doesn't make any sense because that's way more than their $2 million. Like we said, we just build them a facility. So in my head, we don't need the capacity for 3 sheets of ice. If we did do a 2nd sheet and the Blue Line Center stayed with the curlers, that isn't what they wanted though, because then they're having to, the ceilings are too high. It's not the arrangement that they want for their kitchen, for the other, the viewing area and the other things that they need that they would like to have in that. So I don't see that fitting their needs. It's working right now, but I think they left with the feeling that they're going to be able to fit their needs with another building. So that's kind of where I see things at. My other question is, we had kind of talked about that we missed out on some dry events because we didn't have the square footage with the CVB for some events coming. If that building, the 3rd space, was unattached, do we know, would we still be in the running for some of those type of events? Or is it the understanding that all of them are continuous and connected?
I asked that question of Beth Fisher, and she said as long as they're on the same property where they can be easily accessed.
Okay.
She said ideally, yes, they would be interconnected, you wouldn't have to go outside, but she said as long as they're within the same area, it would be advantageous.
Okay.
So she answered that question when I asked her that question.
Julie, I think what Sean said earlier still correlates to your point, though, and yeah, the curlers can build their own facility. The capacity that we're talking about in option C is that potentially that curling facility would be the 3rd sheet if it's in proximity. What the curling facility has proposed from a refrigeration standpoint is a commercial refrigeration unit versus an industrial. So the life of that unit probably isn't the 30 years that Scott spoke
The 30 years that we,
You know, that's why we think the flexibility for the 3rd sheet is, you know, comes into play with the curling facility as well, is what we're saying. But if they're doing a standalone with their own refrigeration system, you're probably right. We don't necessarily need to overbuild this one.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I get the feeling that staff is wanting to put the curling arena or a new ice facility, like option C right there behind there, and attach it. And you would just as soon have a practice rink for us there and then give the Blue Line Club, let them use it for curling. I mean, I get that feeling. Am I right?
That's definitely one option, and
But I mean,
in my own opinion, is a viable option, absolutely. I mentioned earlier that A or C would work because of the proximity to one refrigeration system. The other thing you get by having an attached building is the availability of shared restrooms, shared concession stands, shared different amenities.
But if it was located where A is, you got to go through the Blue Line Club to get to there.
Or around the end of it, yep. Which is doable. I mean, one of the options that we talked about early on in the location of the refrigeration system was on the east side of the Cardinal, but had some of the same limitations because of the length of lines, pipes that need to go back to the Blue Line. So there's close a proximity to that where there's it's a green dot there on this screen for the refrigeration system, as close to that as possible is the most efficient use of that space.
Well, C seems to be the correct place to put it, whatever we do. Just for close proximity to the ice-making machine. And I just want to know that we're the ones that are going to make the decision, the council here, whether or not they're going to have a standalone building or if we're going to go with, I'm going to say, your recommendation of having them in the Blue Line Center and then we build a new practice facility, like he stated to us. That's our two options, right?
The two options that I would propose, and I'm not saying I've leaned one way or the other yet, is C or A, is what I'm saying, because of the proximity to the refrigeration.
But you're leaning toward us doing a practice rink and put them in the Blue Line Center.
Well, I mean, if you're building new, then you get to choose which site you want to build new.
But you would rather see a hockey facility and give them the Blue Line Center. I mean, am I hearing you right? I think Mr. Brizendine is kind of stating the same thing, and that's the decision we have to make.
I think the Blue Line facility works very well as a curling facility. I think when they set it up for their bond spiels, I think it looks very, very good. Very, I don't know if that's the right term for curling, but I think it can be, there is some upgrades that need to be done to that, and without looking into those numbers, it'd be hard for me to say if that was the best use of the funds, but there is some, like they were mentioning, some humidification and some insulation that needs to be done to that facility to get it to for their use. But definitely a viable option.
Okay.
I'm just waiting to see if he's going to follow up. He looks like he might have a follow-up.
Oh, go ahead.
Councilmember Nelson.
So the difference is the curlers have put together a plan to go out and raise the funds. How are you funding the city paying for a third sheet of ice?
Short answer, I have not proposed any funding level at this point. If the council decides to do that, we will work with finance to figure out how to, and council, and figure out what the options are and make a proposal at that point.
So I want to go back, Councilmember Schwanta said this too. We have a crisis mode with our ice system. We have for years. We haven't done anything. So I don't see a third sheet of ice with city funds as the top of the heap for what needs to be done in this community. And so I'm just curious with, I mean, the proposal is interesting, but I think, I'm just curious with how you think we could do this right now. And if, I mean.
Short answer is I don't think we can do it right now. Any of it. If you want to know the truth, it wasn't on the capital plan. It wasn't in the retreats that the council had for the capital plans. The proposal, I still think, is short on cost for that facility, and that's what I think.
You know, I was thinking the same thing. I'm in construction, and I'm looking at what they're putting up there in the square footage, and when he was stating that they could reduce it by taking a few things out, well, you need a contingency fund, first of all, 10 to 15% at least. And I know how costs can go, and we might as well. That's the famous saying when you're building a home, oh, we might as well. It's another 10,000 or another 20.
So are you saying that
happens
the
quickly.
curler's proposal is short, or the funds that we have talking about the master plan is short?
No, I'm not a planner. I believe the curler's funds are short.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the proposal they brought forward tonight is going to go and be fine-tuned and be brought back to us. So we'll have to wait to see where that is at, with what their proposal is. So I don't know. It's disappointing that this is coming out at this state of the game when we've been planning for this for a long time and talking about things for a long time.
I still think it's on them to raise the money. So when they come out with their hard numbers, it comes up higher. It's up to them to come up with the money. We're still down to what we presently have is 2 facilities for our hockey and our ice skating. And we only need an ice system for 2 sheets of ice. Unless there's some dancing around here that I'm not reading, that you're really leaning towards this 3rd sheet being attached, that you haven't, it's not clear to me why that should be.
Councilmember Osmus, I've given you all the information I have, and all my proposals still lean towards the building it for 3 for the future, for whatever that future looks like.
Sad that the other piece is the facility study that was approved by the city council body that we have yet to really kick off. And that's, I think, why you're hearing staff saying what they're saying tonight. You know, the curling facility, they're talking about 7 months out of the 12 months, you know, so what does that mean for the other 5 months? You know, from an operations standpoint, the staff have not vetted any of that issue yet, you know, so I think there's a lot of these things that have not been discussed, and I think Sean, that we didn't spend any time. We had 2 retreats in the last 6 months, you know, so we haven't, us as a whole team have not sat here and had these discussions. So I think what's nice about tonight is we're having these discussions.
Oh, yes.
Mayor.
Well, I'm just gonna say that, yes, we did talk about the ice plant during the retreat, and it was listed as a priority.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Mayor and council, this is what direction I'm looking for from this discussion. I'm looking that next week, I would like to bring a proposal to the council. We have spent the money, we have hired the engineers. We have made the decision that the icing equipment is a priority. It was discussed in the retreat. I remember discussing it myself, saying anything that could fall apart needs to be replaced, because I've replaced equipment in the middle of a season, and then you pay through the nose. Some of you may remember me saying something to that effect. So having said that, to me, I look at the options of if we build it with the capability of a 3rd sheet of ice, we can tweak that a little bit, and we can build it partially and have it basically set up to be modified at a later date, and that gives us some cost savings. Or we can simply go with the 2 sheets of ice and build it, and then when and if, whether it's 10 years or 15 years or 5 years, that we need it for a 3rd sheet of ice, then we pay for that at that appropriate time. Now, the reason that time is of the essence is, if you recall, we thought we were going to have it done this year. That was the goal. We've been talking about this now for 90 days. And I think I'm being generous with 90 days. So I just recommend that you think about the two options, you think about what our engineer is saying, you think about the cost, and so really it's just an option to you. Do you feel better about, the third sheet of ice, paying for it now or paying for it later? I think that kind of simplifies it. And then as far as the study and everything like that, we're going to spend that money, and we're going to compare all options, and we're going to get input from everybody from the high school coach to, the hockey league. So we'll get that input, and then we'll go forward. But right now, we have an immediate pressing need to replace this icing equipment. So that's what I'm looking for, Mayor, and that's what I propose that we bring back next week on the 5th. Thank you.
Councilor Nelson.
I think we have to make a decision to do this, but I'd like to see the third option that was presented tonight, somewhere in between. With that, you've had the figures, you've changed them multiple times, so come back with how can we preserve the option to do the third sheet for the least amount of money right now? And do we have to do that whole room as proposed, or is there ways to save that for the design of the plan later?
Again, we can put together a whole alphabet full of options. The intent of these three was three distinctively different options, which is why I presented them to you the way I did. If you're asking for what Scott had mentioned earlier, for removing just the unnecessary now parts, we can put a C1 option together or something along those lines if that's what you prefer. We had 2 or 3 other options together before, and we narrowed it down to these 3. So,
Councilmember Schwantes.
If you're looking for an inkling, I will tell you that I'm in favor of option B. I would ask the curlers to do their own thing with their own ice plant and such, and to have their facility hopefully attachable to our current buildings.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, the original plan that we gave to the curlers had the building across the front of the Blue Line Center, and it had them sharing utilities and sharing fire protection, coming off the riser there at the front of that building. And then when they laid it in there wasn't enough room for it. So, I think that when you take a look at the dollars, and we have a lot of needs in this community for facilities right now. And if we do option B for the 2.697, that gives us the ability to have that inside Zamboni room, gives the curling club clear direction that they can move forward with their project. And if it comes to the fact that they can't raise their money, that gives us the option of saying, let's put on a local option sales tax. And we can do have it as one of the items for local option sales tax. The curling club left tonight with the understanding that we were going to give them the green light on moving forward on their project. And we need to stay true to our word when you take a look at the dollars that we're talking about here. We could take the savings of option B to option C and assist the curling club and still be under the dollars that we're talking about. I mean, holy buckets, folks, we're talking about another $3 million to do another building here. And the curling club has told us 40% of that building at the Blue Line Center they wouldn't use. I mean, nobody builds a building with 40% more space than they need nowadays. I mean, we talk on a regular basis that we want to be a fiscally conservative council, and that is being fiscally conservative. That's doing the right thing. we're going to have to decide what we're going to do here. We have one request to bring additional information back, option CA, or C1, or whatever you want to call it. But, I don't want staff sitting there spinning their wheels on another project, because, I talk to Mr. Holland on a regular basis, and he's pulling his hair out because he's doing 6 jobs by himself right now. And, to give him a job to just spin his wheels when at the end of the day, we're not going to do it anyhow. Let's give him clear direction on what we want him to do. We've got the engineer here, we got the finance people here. Thanks for staying, by the way. Let's move this Civic Center complex to the class operation that it can be by going with these 2 options. So I concur with that thought.
Just a question, Sean, your idea of putting a third sheet of ice out there for hockey, and then the blue line to the curling club, would that mean leaving it as is presently, so they're going to continue curling in the blue line club, and until the day that we get that other sheet? It could be 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. Is that what you're thinking?
Again, Mr. Christensen, without going into details of the process, sure. I think that would make the most sense, because because we need the 2 sheets that are there now.
Yep.
And so you can't dedicate one of them to any user group at this time. So you would have to leave things as is while you built or waited to build the
Next
third building.
Okay.
I got a question. Can you, with this map here, do we have that with the 4 proposed sites? Does B have to be like this? Can it be angled, or is it, this is not this is just a rough design?
Yes, yeah, we've said that many times tonight, is that, we've got this as a rough design. I think, Councilmember Alvarado, I think if we pulled that up, we wanted to do worst-case scenario, and we did that so that we could tell the council how much it was going to cost to run that sewer system. So that's basically why these were put in, is kind of the reason we did it. So there has been nothing that has been said, no stake has been put in the ground,
Right. Okay.
And even like Mr. Christensen just said a little bit ago, what would happen if we moved the ice plant to the east side of the Cardinal Arena? What does that do for us? That's going to dramatically decrease the cost of that, if you're going to use that third sheet of ice. But
Well,
I don't know if that's what you're talking about. Or
Right,
not.
well, I'm just thinking that that's going to be maybe part of the function of the planning group there. But I still believe that the curling people should have their own facility, their own building. Build it the way they want to build it. And I'm for that. I'm not excited about putting them in I know they're there now, but I'm not excited about them going into the Blue Line Club. I don't think there's going to be a lot of work to gut it, to put their kitchens in and this and that, so I'm not advocating for that myself.
And if I might add, specifically for location B, and I know it's, now that I'm saying this, option B for refrigeration is completely separate than location B on this slide, so make that clarification. Location, there's a couple different options here, reasons that location B doesn't work as well. There's potential, just off of the slide here to the east or to the right is the Glacial Lakes trailhead, and so if you put a building there, it potentially limits the expansion or anything that might be done to that trailhead location, parking lot area, things of that nature. So there's definitely some more thought before you put it exactly in that location. So yeah, exactly. Maybe it rotates up, maybe it goes over to the closer to the building, whatever that might be. The other thing I was going to add is that the planning group or the consultant that we've hired already for this facility has weighed in on the location of the refrigeration system. And I did mention that we had looked at other options, potentially on the east side of the Civic Center, the Cardinal Arena. That was already vetted out through our planning facility or planning consultant that we've already hired. And they've said, based on all the information given, that the best location for the refrigeration plant is where I've indicated tonight.
Where the green dot is.
Where the green dot is, thank you.
Sean, on diagram A there, can that building be connected some other way? We could alter the parking lot, couldn't we, if we move it
Yes,
south?
to both.
Yeah.
Or
So
the
that-
next question also.
Okay.
Anything's an option.
But didn't you say there wasn't enough room or something for A?
No, the curlers had said that. I don't think staff.
Yeah, no, I think there's enough room.
It was turned this way before.
East and west?
We turned
that
it
wasn't-
east to west previously at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, then there's not quite enough length without moving a sewer line. So, I mean, again, anything's possible, but in this orientation, parallel to, if you will, the blue line, there is plenty of room there.
So you could take, and I know the answer is going to be yes. So you could take A, move it up against the Blue Line Center, not attach it because of the issues with the Blue Line Center. And then you could make a walkway between the two facilities to interconnect them?
Yes.
Was that what you were suggesting at that one point in your conversation about half an hour ago?
You know,
Talking
that's
about
absolutely.
shared bathrooms?
Yeah, that's absolutely an option. And what you do with that connection can, sky's the limit there. I mean, look at what the connection ended up being
Right.
between the current Blue Line and current Cardinal Arena. I mean, the original design was just a hallway, a covered walkway. And, what we have now is pretty impressive. So, yes, any of that option, potential possibilities are there.
And I'll ask our two senior council members, but when we went to connect those two buildings, as I remember, there was an issue with the Blue Line Center being a floating slab. And so there had to be something done different on that connection between the vestibule between the two buildings? Is my memory serving me right?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, originally, it wasn't going to be that elaborate, the connection. And then we put it in with the sales tax and got an architect involved, and that's what we got. A lot more money.
Sounds good. Councilmember Nelson.
I just was going to comment, I know in the conversations we've had over the years, that was the reason that I asked the question about the footings, because when we had the original conversation, that was the issue with the Blue Line Arena or even adding on to it.
Right.
It's a floating slab. So.
I can't believe it's a floating slab. I mean,
It was sand. It was just a building and with sand underneath it.
you got to have frost footings around that thing. Sean, is there frost footings around the Blue Line Center?
I don't have the blueprints in front of me. I didn't grab them tonight, but I could find out. I don't know for
Wouldn't
sure.
you suspect there are, though? I mean,
Should have had Kevin Madsen stick around.
I know some of the dads that were probably on the construction crew, so I could probably find out.
yeah. I mean, if it was a floating slab, there could be potential problems out there.
Right, and I don't know if they put a slab in, I know it was a sand floor to begin with, and I don't know if they put the slab in after, then it might be floating slab.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know that.
You may be
answer.
right, Mark.
Okay. Is there anybody else from staff that needs to address anything, or does our bond counsel need to speak? Otherwise, he's spent his whole evening here in our lovely company, and you've seen how we make sausage tonight, and it's not fun to watch, but we're getting to the end. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I could just introduce Doug Green from Springsteads and do a couple brief comments. When we started the 2018 budget process, the mayor gave us direction on what he wanted to see proposed for capital improvements. The council's had 2 retreats and have pretty much solidified what his proposals were. Part of that budget process was to propose different types of financing for the various projects at both retreats, and I know we haven't had time to review all the different statutes, but Doug tonight has, we'll try to keep it brief since the lateness of the hour, on the process that we have been in contact with since that budget proposal, what some of the different options that we've been exploring are, and as you've all debated tonight, you'll know that the devil is in the details. So I'll leave it with that, and Doug, if you want to just maybe briefly go through your presentation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, Doug Green.
Thanks for being here.
Springstead, absolutely. I have been, sat through 4 hours of discussion on chicken ordinance. 6 hours.
So this is good?
Oh, yeah. It's part of the job, and, you know, I do enjoy these conversations, believe it or not. So anyway, let you know to set your expectation. This will be the easiest part of your evening because it is just informational, and it'll only be about 5 to 10 minutes unless you want to talk bonding through the rest of the evening. So as Steve mentioned, the reason why we're doing this now is because historically the city's issued improvement bonds, Chapter 429 assessment bonds, all go by the same name. But now that we're looking to broaden the types of projects that we're going to finance, I thought it'd just be good to have a quick primer on some of the things that will be coming across your desk in the next few weeks. So very quickly, again, this will be 5 minutes. The authority for cities to issue bonds is laid out in state statutes, and there's about a half dozen. We'll go through the most common. There's about a dozen out there that cities use. We'll go through about the most common 5 or 6. But those state statutes outline the types of projects, whether facilities, streets, equipment, the process that you use to issue those bonds, whether they require a referendum or not, if you have to have a public hearing, if those certain bonding authorities allow for a petition that requires you to have a referendum. So there's some different bonding authorities that set maximum amounts. Some go against the city's statutory debt limit, and some do not. None of the city's outstanding bonds count against the statutory debt limit, so your outstanding debt limit is $33 million, which I'm sure not interested in reaching that anytime soon. What revenues are pledged, primarily assessments. A lot of times could be water revenues, sewer revenues, council action. Important thing to keep in mind in Minnesota is we have a very broad authority to issue general obligation bonds without a referendum. You won't see that in other states. You have to have, schools don't have as broad as authority as cities do. That's why you see more, referendums on the school side. So very quickly, there's no point in going into detail about this. Hopefully this will just put this into context as, we do finance these additional projects over the next 1 to 2 years. Improvement bonds, that's what you're used to. Those are those projects that are assessed at least 20%. And again, don't have to have a referendum for those. I will say all these except the very last one, you have the authority to pledge your general obligation, your full faith and credit. That doesn't mean you will repay them with property taxes. Could use water, sewer assessments, any city resources, but you do pledge the general obligation in case those other revenues are short. Equipment certificates. Certificates is another name for bonds. It's just debt. They're debt obligations. Street reconstruction plan bonds. Again, these names are in there just because that's what they call them in statute. Those are for street improvements that are assessed less than 20%. Because you do assess more than 20%, like most cities, we issue improvement bonds. Capital improvement plan bonds are for facilities, essential service facility improvements or new facilities, city halls, libraries, public works facilities. Utility revenue bonds, which the utility and the city have outstanding utility revenue bonds. State aid street bonds, which the city doesn't utilize. And then the last two are abatement bonds, which are a little more obscure, but we will be using that authority for the Civic Center project. And I have there the purposes economic development purposes, which it is. It's in the economic development statutes, but it's primarily used for, and I should have put this down there, for recreational facilities, which this is. All those other 5 to 6 above, recreation facilities really aren't covered in the list of projects that are authorized under those statutes. So recreation facilities most often falls under this abatement bonds. Lease revenue bonds, we don't have to worry about that for about another year and a half until the curling club comes back with their 60% match. So we'll leave that for then. So looking at the 2018 bonds, the Civic Center project, which statutory authorities we're going to use, equipment certificates for the R22 replacement, and if you don't pay cash for the bleachers, we can use equipment certificate authorities for bleachers. Again, the security is a general obligation pledge. It's no referendum. We're limited to 10 years for equipment certificates, except for, and I'll jump down, that should be probably Steve caught that, is a 2017 law change, not 2007. The one place where you can finance equipment for more than 10 years is R22, to eliminate the R22. So that is a recent change. So over the next few weeks, we'll be figuring out how long we want to finance that project for. The other piece is for the expanded resurfacer room. And that's if you go that route, because again, that additional room, that facility doesn't fall neatly under any of the other statutes, so we'll use this authority called abatement. And forget what the Webster's Dictionary says about abatement, it doesn't apply here. Again, the purpose is economic, preserve tax base, and bond councils, the attorneys have decided that making these improvements to recreation facilities is preserving tax base. So we can issue general obligation bonds without a referendum. And it is, frankly, kind of a goofy process. If you do use this authority and you finance an improvement with it, we'll have what we call an abatement levy. And for all practical purposes, that's the same thing. It's synonymous with the debt service levy. Because, not to go into detail, what happens is we identify properties that benefit from this improvement. It's not a strict benefit test like you're used to with assessment bonds. But we say these properties benefit from it. Normally it's properties that are very close. And we theoretically redirect those city portions of property taxes to make those debt service payments. Well, state statutes require, because that's a loss obviously to the general fund, state statutes require you to increase the levy in equal amount, and that increased levy is called an abatement levy. In reality, you're increasing levy to make those debt service payments. So it's sort of semantics. It does require a public hearing. It is not subject to a reverse referendum, though.
Excuse me, if you could go back to that screen,
Yes.
if I could just interject. At one of the council meetings, the council had asked about the bleachers. That's why it's discussed at this point only to explore the option and the length of time that we could if you chose to add it later on. But that was an item that was not budgeted in the 18, but the council had asked us to check into that, and that's why it's mentioned here.
And again, those can only be financed up to 10 years, and the eliminated R22 can go up to 20 years. I would suggest we don't need to go through this now. When we do have the discussion about financing the city's portion, these three abatement bonds, again, lease revenue bonds, and then their close cousins, certificates of participation, those will be really the three options available to the city to finance its portion of the project, if it does indeed go through. So last slide, looking ahead at the 2018 A bonds, I believe the improvement hearings are coming up, sometime soon. And then with the equipment certificates, the archery and two, and possibly the bleachers. And then if you do the resurfacer room, the abatement bonds. And what we can do here is combine all these different purposes together and sell them as one bond series. The potential investors, underwriters won't know or care, frankly, what we're financing. They'll just, purchase it, the bonds all together. They'll manage them separately as, separate projects internally, but we'll combine those to save on financing costs, and frankly, the larger the par amount makes the bonds more marketable as well. And so over the next few weeks, you'll see multiple public hearing notices and calls for public hearing coming through, because we have, two processes, the ordinance process for the local authority and the abatement process for the state authority, and then, of course, the improvement bonds. So that will be lots of paperwork crossing your desk. So, have any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you. You're welcome. Absolutely.
What is our bond rating right now?
It is a AA2, which is
Pretty good.
it's excellent. I mean, we
So
will, as a part of this process with the 18A bonds, we will go through that, and I don't expect anything to change. It's quite a lot of work for the finance department to prepare for that, but I expect it to stay the same.
Okay. So it stayed the same even after we changed the Rice Hospital stuff, right?
Well, we still need to have those conversations. We're just not foreseeing any change.
Oh, so this would be the first one that goes out after the Rice Hospital?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. But that is not, Moody's hasn't necessarily wanted to have those conversations. We've notified them of it, but it hasn't, really risen to the level where they, want to talk about it. They do know that we're going to be issuing bonds later, so I suspect they'll just say we'll talk about it at that point.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Thank you for sticking with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your report.
Hope that was helpful.
It's very, very informative. It really lets us know what's going on, so appreciate that. So thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Councilmember Nelson has a couple things she wants to hand out.
Yep, tomorrow night is the Willmar Lakes Area Vision 2040 Refresh event. I don't know if everybody's RSVP yet. I did bring some sheets because I had asked Ike to send them out, and I don't think they did get sent out. So hopefully you can be there. They're reviewing what we did in the last 5 years and kind of making plans for what's going to happen in the next 5 years. So I don't know. If you signed up on some committees, they've been emailing things out, but I don't know for sure. But it would be great if we would have a good representation there for the community.
Does anybody have anything else good for the good of the order? Okay, thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you. 9:30 tomorrow at the fire station. Yep.
We could talk about chicken.